Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
I'm Chad McCanna.
And this is a very special abortion clinic episode of the Kongversation.
That's not a sentence that's uttered often. It's a very special abortion clinic.
You know, we are what we are here on the Kongversation. We are pro women's health and we're pro canceled games.
Yeah. Yeah, we are the intersection of abject liberalism and gaming fandom.
So I can make a lot of offensive jokes right now. I'm not going to, though, because I want to build an audience.
No, I think the fact that our aborted titles icon on the website is a coat hanger is offensive enough.
I like how we're trying to grow the DK Vine brand, and yet we don't have that self-control.
We just don't. We don't. We will always shoot ourselves in the foot. That's the DK Vine way.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want it any other way because then you're not being true to yourself.
Yep. I'd rather die in the poorhouse, no one knowing my name, but still have a bit of integrity.
Oh, so you're expecting to be in the poorhouse. Like you're shooting high then, because I'm just expecting to be in the gutter.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. At least the poorhouse has a roof of sorts.
Yeah, but the gutter you have access to. Runoff, so you can get plenty of drinking water.
That's true. Although I would question its potability.
I'm sure you build up quite the immunity when you're in the gutter.
I would imagine the homeless are basically superhumans as far as their immune systems go.
That would be the most terrible entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I think really that's what Hancock's superpower was.
Yeah. Oh, well, I thought.
Does anyone remember Hancock? Is that a reference I can still make?
I think they remember it as that's the moment where Will Smith's career became fallible.
Actually, I didn't mind Hancock that much. It fell apart in the last act, but
yeah,
the premise was okay.
Yeah, I thought the general consensus was the premise was great. It just fell apart with the last portion of the movie.
Yeah, they tried to make it into an origin story rather than kind of a premise-based genre parody.
I did like the porn parody Hancock. It was pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
to the point.
It was strange that was a lesbian porno, though.
It's even stranger that Jaden Smith starred in it.
Well, Will did set up the deal after all.
Well, he did, Yeah. All right. I've got two kids. One of them's got to be an actor. One of them's got to be a rapper.
Mm-hmm. And I've got this big Willie-style branding that I've got to use somewhere.
All right. Well.
Wow, immediately. We're off to the races. This is what happens when we don't have someone like the buttoned-down Steve McCorkle to keep us honest.
It was he did release a great comedy album, The Button-Down Mind of Steve McCorkle.
Yeah, it was where you got his comedy aged backwards. You got the punchline first.
No, Chad, do you know what happened 2 weeks ago? What was that? That was a grunt. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's really I'm monosyllabic. It's early.
All right. It sounds like a racial slur, monosyllabic. 2 weeks ago.
Or a disease. Okay.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, 20 years ago, what happened?
20 years ago. Oh, I didn't say 20 years ago.
Did I say 20 years ago? Oh my God. I must be either reading your mind or looking at our show outline.
20 years ago, August 14th, 1995, a little system was released in the West, and that system was called the Virtual Boy.
Oh, I thought you were going to go Neo Geo Pocket Color.
No, I never played. I was such a Nintendo fanboy during this time that I never played any system that. I mean, I played the Sega Genesis and the Game Gear by virtue of friends having them.
Right.
But as far as wanting to own and seeking out systems, I was a Nintendo loyalist. It took Rare being sold to Microsoft for me to branch out beyond Nintendo's borders.
Did it really? So you didn't even. No, that can't be true, because I remember we used to play Grand Theft Auto Vice City back before the Microsoft sale.
Dude, Vice City came a couple years after the Microsoft sale.
No. What year did Vice City come out?
That was, I want to say 2004, 2005?
No, I played Vice City in high school.
All right.
There's no way we could find this. No, 2002. October 27th, 2002.
Okay, but it didn't come out for the Xbox until a little bit after that.
Yeah, it was a PS2 game.
Yeah, but it was released on the Xbox some date after that, and anyway, we played Vice City, but we could have bought Vice City after the buyout.
Sure.
And that's pretty much what I did. I mean, the buyout was 2002, so I got an Xbox, I think, early 2003, maybe.
Yeah, Vice City was released as a celebration for when all the good people left Rare. Honestly, I feel like we need to take the power back from that phrase by just repeating it into the ground.
Yeah. Anyway, so I didn't buy an Xbox until I had a reason to buy an Xbox, and that was when my beloved Rare was sold to the competition, and then I was like, well, okay then. Xbox, you're an honorary Nintendo system.
I don't think that's how it works, but if that's what makes you sleep at night.
Honestly, like, Nintendo loyalists should think of it like that, because Banjo-Kazooie was a Nintendo IP.
Yeah.
Owned by Nintendo branded, like, all the, like, Banjo-Kazooie merchandise from that era was released right alongside the Mario and Zelda and Donkey Kong stuff. So, really, they should have not, like, disowned Banjo-Kazooie. Nintendo loyalists should have been like, well, I've got to buy an Xbox now to follow Banjo-Kazooie.
Yeah, and if you are a Nintendo fan, or loyalist, as you put it, from the late 90s, then, you know, as it's been pointed out, now that Rare Replay is out, there are more Nintendo 64 games on the Xbox than there are on the Wii U Virtual Console.
I'll one-up you on that. There's more playable Nintendo 64 games, given how the games are emulated on the Wii U's Virtual Console, as we experienced with Donkey Kong 64.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, the C stick. It's just, or the C buttons. It's a mess.
It just doesn't feel right. Like playing Banjo-Kazooie, or I'm sure with you, like Jet Force or what have you, on the Xbox One controller, it feels so natural.
Right.
My brain doesn't have to think about it, despite the fact this is an entirely different controller. Whereas the Wii U, you know, it's Nintendo hardware, and I'm just struggling for my brain to relearn how to play this game on something that's mapped completely differently. It's bizarre, actually.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I think all that really Nintendo does is they run QA on the straight ported titles to make sure that, you know, they don't crash, that they run correctly. But as far as the control mapping goes, there's very little additional thought or love put into it, which is kind of the antithesis of the way Rare Replay was developed.
Yeah. I mean, granted, Rare Replay is that, you know, they had to make sure everything was polished to perfection, because it's a package. It's not just being dumped on their emulation machines. Yeah. So
I think the one criticism, or not really criticism, I guess request that I would make about Rare Replay's N64 emulation is that I think Conquer, especially the multiplayer and the latter stages, could benefit from a Jet Force Gemini style new control mode. I've just hit a brick wall in Bachelor's Castle. Because the controls, it's the exact same issue. The control stick mapping is flipped, and my brain, like, I have to do that mental abstraction layer, and by the time I've done that, I'm being devoured by a zombie.
Oh god.
Have you gotten there yet? I know that the zombie thing was like one of the hardest segments for you to do on the original run.
Yeah, because I hate zombie. Like, I've gotten better with zombies just because pop culture has been so infested with them for the last decade. That
have you seen the cliche fest that is Fear the Walking Dead yet?
Oh, well, you know what? This is supposed to be an evergreen episode, Chad. So maybe we should save the conversation for Fear the Walking Dead at a later time, because oh my god, what a fucking joke that.
Did you watch it though? Did you watch
it? I watched it because I hate the term hate watch, but I literally hate watched it because I just had to know.
I haven't hate watched something in a long time, but honestly, in New York City, the bus ads are virtually ubiquitous. Like, they're finally now Stephen Colbert late show bus ads are starting to replace the Fear the Walking Dead ones, but it's you're just getting inundated with yet another zombie series.
My favorite part of it, I'm sorry, you derailed me, I've got to say. My favorite part of it was the teacher. I'm going to be teaching Jack London on this day of all days. I'm going to be teaching how nature always wins,
right.
in quotes. And then the next day, we're going to be teaching chaos theory. And I'm like,
oh, yeah.
High school is this?
I really appreciated that because I remember loving the chaos theory lesson from my high school.
Right.
Dude, if an actual high school teacher ever wanted to teach chaos theory, they would put in like a VHS tape of Jurassic Park that quits halfway through.
Yeah. I also liked all the stupid fake outs like, the principal, he isn't responding. He must be a zombie. Oh no, wait, he's just distracted by work.
Yes, it's like we get it. You've postmodernized your own franchise by now. We understand. Yes, it's a savvy audience. Ha ha ha. How many gags are we going to make to that effect?
It's just shit. Like they have nothing new to say, and I mean, at least with Better Call Saul, the other AMC spinoff, at very least,
prequel too.
Prequel too. Well, it's. I think Better Call Saul is going to play a little bit looser with the timeline.
Okay, sure, but the main thrust of the narrative takes place before the series that spawned it.
Right now at least.
Yes.
Yeah. But at least they made that show because they had something more to say about that character, and they felt creatively unfulfilled if they couldn't.
Right.
Where with this, it's people love zombies.
Money.
Yeah. I imagine Robert Kirkman takes a drag of a cigarette through his dick hole. Like,
What?
We
were doing so well for 12 minutes.
I would argue,
and now you've got an insufflating urethra. What has happened? I
would argue that going on a tangent about zombies in pop culture in our Virtual Boy episode is not doing well. But so let's
rein it in.
Rein it in. Let's turn things around and go back 20 years. August 14th. It was a hot summer day in North America.
You're really setting the stage. It was a day as hot as the pilot episode setting of Fear the Walking Dead. The LA River was in shambles.
Full of shamblers. The Virtual Boy, Chad. Now, we've talked about this on this show before, but we've only made brief tangents about it. We've only alluded to our time spent with the system because I think, with today's gamers and most of the people on the internet, we're in a unique position because we both still own Virtual Boys. And
I even brought it with me to Brooklyn, despite the fact that I have no room for physical media of any kind.
Well, I mean, the nice thing about the Virtual Boy, I don't know if it's the nice thing about the Virtual Boy, but the unique thing about the Virtual Boy is it can't be emulated in any legitimate way. So,
well, it hasn't been emulated, but I think the 3DS is a perfect opportunity.
Yeah, yes, but even then, the experience would be drastically different because
they would need to release a peripheral foam frame for your 3DS.
Yeah, so let's talk about the history of the Virtual Boy and what we think about it, because I think our opinions on the system would be controversial just based on the fact that we actually love the damn thing. And it's kind of the butt of a lot of jokes, but I think that's because most people haven't actually played it.
Yeah, it's very much the grab by the ghoulies of Nintendo consoles.
Yeah, it really is, and it's rare. Ha 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 ha. It's rare for
at a certain point making that pun and then making a joke about how lame and unintentional that pun is going to require its own series of ironic ha ha ha's.
Yeah, I was actually just doing my best. Remember at the end of Batman '89 when Jack Nicholson fell off the cathedral?
Yeah.
And he had the laugh box?
Right.
Yeah, it's rare for a Nintendo property or release to have the grab by the ghoulies effect, because usually people will defend or white knight Nintendo for as long and hard as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to be so dismissive of something, it's really, really strange. And like, it's almost unfathomable to me at this point that something like the Virtual Boy would be released, and there wouldn't be droves of people lining up to defend it and Nintendo.
Well, it came out at an unfortunate time when the Ultra 64 was on everyone's lips, and the VR craze had a lot of bluster and a lot of promise.
Hey, baby, guess what? Guess
oh no,
whose lips I was on? Oh yeah, baby, it was 1995. I scored with so many hot interns. All right,
I wanted to bury my face in something, but it wasn't red and black foam plastic.
Well, it was red once a month. If you know what
Jesus, no, Hyle Russell, no.
You see, Chad. All right,
I feel like a dog. I need to rub your face in those remarks.
I know this isn't a popular opinion, but every month blood comes out of wherever. Look, all right, Trump 2016.
Your Trump is Southern.
Segueing from Clinton to Trump.
All right, you guys, I don't want to lose my toupee here, but Trump 2016.
Yeah! All right. Well, I'm working on my Trump because Trump is going to be our next president, so I've got to work on my Trump.
And those SNL auditions are right around the corner.
They are. Somebody's got to play him. So anyway,
that's what it says on the casting call. Lord Michaels, someone's got to play him. And we don't want Bobby Moynihan again.
Oh, God, Bobby Moynihan.
You haven't gotten to that Rick and Morty yet, have you? With the Bobby Moynihan thing?
No.
Oh my God. You promised me you would watch Rick and Morty this weekend.
Okay, well, we have a lot of DK Vine stuff to work on, so in my downtime, I'll find time to work on Rick and Morty.
And in his 26th consecutive season, Bobby Moynihan. It was probably recorded before Don Pardo died. So, yeah. Anyway,
so, well, 1995, I think I would agree. I mean, I don't know if you did you have a Super Nintendo yet in 1995?
Yes, I did.
Okay. 1995 was a good year for us. I mean, it's so much so that we haven't escaped from it entirely yet. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean good as far as like our school or, whatever, because 1995 was actually a terrible year for me because I was starting middle school that year. So fuck that.
Jesus. Yeah. The less said about middle school, the better.
But the strength of
that was when Spock became my best friend.
Oh, that's the saddest thing. It's the saddest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. Thanks, Sci-Fi Network's afternoon block of programming.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
And you got married before me. So 1995 was a very good year for us because not only this was like the height of Donkey Kong Country mania. This is where Donkey and Diddy couldn't go down the streets without being chased by swarms of teenage girls. And Donkey Kong Country had come out, Donkey Kong Land had come out, and we are gearing up for Donkey Kong Country 2.
Yes.
Like this was just a frenzy. And
Diddy was a more popular or more widely used Nintendo mascot than Mario himself.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like this is that golden period, those 2 delicious years where Mario was virtually unseen and Donkey and Diddy were everywhere. Like this is what I want to get back to, and I know we never will, but this is in my head, this is the way things should be. This is the neutral state of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So not only was all this Donkey Kong Country stuff happening and Donkey Kong Land, but the Nintendo Ultra 64 was about a year away. And of course, I remember calling it Ultra Nintendo because that seemed like the right thing to call it. Because you had Nintendo, you had Super Nintendo, Ultra Nintendo seemed like the natural next step in that lineage.
Just because there was one system that had its title preceding the... Because the Nintendo is neutral.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing about this time, though, Chad. There was only 3 Nintendo systems. I'm discounting like Game & Watches or whatever, because honestly, I didn't know about Game & Watches until much later.
Well, I mean, they're systems, but they're not consoles.
Right. But as far as like Nintendo releases go, there is the Nintendo Entertainment System, which is basically ground zero for Nintendo as far as I or most people my age or your age were concerned.
Yes.
There was the Game Boy, the original brick Game Boy. The only other way you could play Game Boy games at this time was on the Super Game Boy on the Super Nintendo.
Right.
And there, the the Super Nintendo. So those three. I might have already said Super Nintendo. Can't remember.
Super Nintendo? Did you mention that one?
Yes, I said Super Nintendo just
Super
now.
Nintendo. Okay.
Wow, we are... So three systems, as far as I was concerned, in Nintendo's entire history. And we knew the Nintendo Ultra 64 was coming, which is going to be the third console, the next step in that console lineage. So it was a very, like, basic time. Like, this was before, they would be releasing new models of Game Boy, just like the Game Boy Pocket was around the corner. But we didn't, have it. Like, at this point, they just released different colored versions of the Game Boy, like the brick Game Boy. So you'd get like a yellow brick Game Boy, a green brick Game Boy, Yeah.
The DMG, as they call it.
DMG?
Yeah, the dot matrix Game Boy.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah, that's like the internal designation. It was called the DMG. And North Korean games are ironically not very well made.
That's the DMZ.
Yes, I know.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yes, I know that zone is spelt with a Z, not a G. Thank you. I'm allowed to twist words to make funnies.
See, if I was in that high school in Fear the Walking Dead, that's my lesson plan.
If you were in that high school in Fear the Walking Dead, if you were a student there, you would have, like, intimate knowledge of the socio-political climate on the DMZ.
I would also bring a knife and somehow not get suspended. That was another thing about, you try to sneak a knife into school. Well, okay, I'm just going to keep this, but you're fine.
Yeah, you're probably being bullied and will not be expelled today. In a Los Angeles public school of all fucking places. Oh my God. Those places are demilitarized zones, for Christ's sake.
Hey, I'm going to go wander into this drug den in the middle of the night just to make sure there aren't any cannibals.
Oh yeah. Cannibals? Sign me up. Let's go on an adventure. We've got four-wheel drive.
To be fair, Chad, hey man, it's LA.
That's true. That should be the Fear the Walking Dead tagline.
Oh my God. We really should write that show because we...
It's already a post-apocalyptic nightmare-scape.
I know. I mean, the LA River alone.
Which was featured prominently in that episode, I was happy to see.
I love how we actually have Los Angelinos listening to, like, regular listeners from that area. We slag on their poor city.
Yeah, but it's a terrible city. Like, objectively awful, awful.
And now there's a terrible show set in it, so we can really double down.
I know that we're not going to ever be sponsored by the Los Angeles Board of Tourism, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make to slag off their awful, awful, horrible city.
To be fair, E3 originates from there, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, but that's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make but once a year.
And look, I'm not slugging off on the people who live there because there are a lot of nice people who live in Los Angeles.
Right. I just can't imagine ever choosing to live there again.
It's just the infrastructure itself. The city itself is a conduit to evil. It's like in the Ghostbusters video game where there were mandalas around the city used to summon ancient Sumerian gods.
Yeah, it's like, the LA River it's never really filled with water. There's always this sludge at the bottom that might as well be mood slime.
Anyway, so basically this was a very, like, straightforward time for Nintendo systems. There was Game Boy, and then there was the consoles. And the consoles were Nintendo and Super Nintendo.
None of this third pillar nonsense that never played out.
Well, that's the thing. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, because this is the initial attempt to have a third pillar for Nintendo. And the Virtual Boy, I don't remember when I first heard about this. I think because the only way to get news from this time was either the video game magazines or because I wasn't online at this point. Yeah, like Nintendo Online exists on the AOL site, but
right.
I didn't get on AOL for a couple years after this.
It would be one more year for me, 96.
Yeah, well, I remember I got on AOL, and then my parents said, well, we can't justify this. It's too expensive. So
my parents told me we did not get a computer for the internet.
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. That was the mindset at this time. Like, the internet is just this superfluous thing it's not going to be like the backbone of our society or anything.
Now play your load runner and shut the fuck up.
So we got the internet. This was when AOL charged by the minute or whatever. Like, you would get like 23 hours or something, and then after that they would charge by the minute.
I am using the AOL 7.0 free mailer disc as a coaster as we speak. I was
disappointed. I thought you were actually using that to record, like, to be online with me right now. I was like, there's no way Skype could hold up under those circumstances.
Yeah. 65,000 hours later, and I still haven't paid my tab.
That'd be great if they sent out like SWAT teams to like find people who still haven't paid their AOL bills from like 96.
Right.
But yeah, so I got AOL, and then we stopped getting it, and then like I think it was 98 where I finally the internet was becoming big enough that I had to go back to them and beg them. It's like, look, it's ridiculous, we don't have this.
Yeah.
And by then AOL changed their pricing, so we could actually just pay like a flat fee per month. So
I think I had to sit my parents down in front of a Linda Ellerby Nick News special about the internet to convince them that it was not just full of pedophiles.
To be fair, it is full of pedophiles.
Oh, sure.
Hi, Jared. But you know he listens. And he's. Oh man, we really need to cast him in our Grab by the Ghoulies movie.
It's pitch perfect. If there, although I don't think any film company in the world would ensure that production.
That's why we'd have to go to Kickstarter. We would have to self-finance it. So anyway, the only way to get news besides video game magazines was broadcast news and I guess Nick News. But you would be sitting there in the living room with your parents as they watch the evening news, and then they would maybe run a story on something that interests you. And I'm pretty sure that's where I first learned about the Virtual Boy. They did a short little blurb that Nintendo was working on a virtual reality machine.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they phrased it like that. And
there were graphics of 3D grids that were made on a video toaster.
Oh, either that or just people with like a virtual reality headset on them, pre-Oculus Rift, where it's just like this giant thing with like they have gloves on their hands and they're like,
oh yeah, they've always got their hands out in front of them as if they're feeling something.
Yeah. So so I was excited because I don't know about you, but like the early 90s into the mid 90s, the promise was that video games are going to evolve into straight up virtual reality. Like this was the trajectory we were on,
and it was going to happen immediately. Like this is the evolutionary line that
maybe not immediately, because we knew the Nintendo Ultra 64 was coming. We knew I didn't pay much attention to the PlayStation at the time, because the PlayStation was around this era, because it wasn't Nintendo or Sega, so I kind of dismissed it. It was just one of those weird things like the 3DO, or where it was just like this thing that's going to come and go and cost a lot of money, and that none of my friends would actually have, which was the case for a while, and then it just kind of hung around. And I think it was more popular with the older crowd, like college students, and then it kind of worked.
Until GoldenEye.
What do you mean?
I would say I think that GoldenEye, like Rare's shooters, really brought back that older crowd to the 64.
To the 64, right? I'm just saying, like the PlayStation, like it kind of like snuck up on me that it was going to be a thing that was actually had staying power. I was kind of shocked that it hadn't like crashed and burned like the Virtual Boy.
Because for a while it was basically the knockoff that came out of that failed partnership with Nintendo.
Right. I love how it was Nintendo's own Frankenstein monster. Like they were responsible for creating the industry leader that displaced them.
I don't know if it's like a BuzzFeed clickbait falsehood, but a few weeks ago there were pictures circulating of Sony branded SNES controllers.
I think I've seen them.
Yeah.
I've seen them before, pre-BuzzFeed. But so anyway, the promise was virtual reality was coming, like at least by the end of the decade, like the year 2000, we would have virtual reality, and it would be affordable in every home, and this was where video games were going. So I knew like 1995 was way too early for this promise to be made good. So I wasn't expecting the Virtual Boy to actually be like legit straight up virtual reality. I knew you had
an alarming amount of perspective for an 11-year-old.
I was a cynic even then. No, because I knew like if Nintendo had released a straight up virtual reality system, what's the point of the Nintendo Ultra 64? So I knew like there was going to be a hitch to this.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still looking forward to it because when had Nintendo ever steered me wrong?
Yeah,
true.
At this point.
At this point, everything Nintendo released, I generally, saw merit in, and even the brick Game Boy, that you just kind of accepted stuff like that at this time because it's black and white, it has a sickly green hue to it.
But it came out in the 80s, man. Come on.
No, I'm saying I didn't care because I knew like a gamer today there's no way they could like pick that up and play it and enjoy it. They would like be putting that shit down in minutes and laughing about it. But back then, you may you just understood, this is the way it has to be.
Right.
So I don't know. I think I first really learned about the Virtual Boy in greater depth when I got the Donkey Kong Land issue of Nintendo Power in June of that year. When I picked up Donkey Kong Land, I had it on layaway at Walmart because that's the way.
Layaway? Wait, you made multiple installments with interest on Donkey Kong Land?
Yeah, because when you're a kid and you've got a small allowance and you're trying to put it towards a video game, that's what I did because I think Donkey Kong Land was the last DKU game that I didn't get day one, at least for a long while because this was still the era. This was like turning the corner where video game purchases were like considered a big investment. You should have
just started up a shoeshine business out in front of the Toys R Us.
Hey there, sir. Trying to work my way up to Donkey Kong Land. Want to see a face in those steppers?
Oh, and then Jared says, "I know where I'd like to see your face."
Why? Just an innocent, fake premise with the involved a child.
Oh,
and you
sorry.
Have to go pedophile.
I'm sorry, Chad. Defend the pedophiles then. I'm taking a stand against them. I know that might not be popular, but it's what I'm going to do.
I'm sure history will see you out to victory. Yep.
Yeah, so like I got like Donkey Kong Country for Christmas. I got from then on I would get Donkey Kong Country or in big November releases for my birthday. But Donkey Kong Land came out, beginning of summer '95, so I had to actually work for it and. So I felt better putting it on layaway, as if they would run out of Donkey Kong Land,
right.
As if there was a finite amount out there. So I put it on layaway, made, weekly installments, and I think I had it in like 3 weeks. But
I'm sure the disengaged 17-year-old cashier assured you that they would be flying off the shelves.
Donkey Kong Land did very well for itself. It was a million seller, Anyway, so I got the DKL issue, and that was where they had the article about the very first E3, and they had a lot about the Virtual Boy in there, and I devoured that whole issue, because there was stuff about Donkey Kong Land. That was where I learned about Donkey Kong Country 2. They had stuff about the Nintendo Ultra 64 and the Virtual Boy. So it was just kind of like my Bible that summer as far as this is where the gaming is going. This is the future of my life.
Right.
Donkey Kong, the Nintendo Ultra 64, and the Virtual Boy, the third pillar. So
I love that Donkey Kong is one of those pillars.
it still is to this day for me. Come on.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. When did you first play the Virtual Boy?
Honestly, I don't know that I ever played it until I got it after you convinced me into it. Like this
that's right. I convinced you to play it, didn't I?
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, I never had a Nintendo Entertainment System. I had to convince my parents to let me use my lawn mowing money to purchase a Game Boy and then ultimately a SNES. My parents were from that school of thought that video games are evil, which goes a long way toward explaining their reaction to the internet.
But it was your money though. So what, did they want you to invest it in the stock market?
No, they just didn't want that technology in the house.
Right. Well, this was from the era when people thought The Simpsons was wicked.
Oh, so, yeah. And it's strange. Like, as soon as we got a computer and my parents saw that, oh, this kid is capable of doing things that we're not capable of doing. Like, they saw it as an outlet, and that's really when the reins started loosening. But that wasn't until 1996.
It's weird, it's only 20 years ago, and we're constantly wrapped up in that era here on DK Vine. But it's weird how puritanical the 90s were in retrospect. Like, it wasn't the
thanks Reagan.
Yeah, it wasn't the complete suck and fuck fest that we're in right now.
We were young, dumb, but sadly not full of cum. There are so many ways in which that statement is extremely inappropriate.
We really should release Kongversation T-shirts with that slogan on it.
Yeah,
young, dumb, and full of cum.
We looked up.
Wait, we?
No, Janelle and I. I'm getting.
Oh, okay.
Janelle and I looked up the domain youngdumbandfullofcum.com because we just wanted to register it and point the DNS to DK Vine, but sadly the .com TLD was snapped up. But all the other TLDs exist. So if anyone wants young, dumb, and full of cum.ninja, it's all yours.
Young, dumb, and full of cum.computer.
.computer is another viable option.
By the way, GameBest.computer. Head on over there.
Yeah, that's a fantastic games journalism website.
It really is. Thank you, Alistair. So and Matt and
Matt's friend Devin, I think. Devin, maybe.
Something.
Ian Friend.
Ian Friend, yeah. That I refuse to believe Matt knows anybody not named Ian. Mm-hmm. And he also knew a Rodney who was a bit of a twat.
Right. He calls them all on his Ian phone.
Anyway, what the fuck were we talking about? Oh yeah, how puritanical the 90s were and how video games were evil and they were kid stuff, and we really didn't turn the corner until I think the Clinton scandal. Hey, baby. That was really when sex and video games became the norm.
Well, that was when the internet was kind of pushed into the public consciousness because all of that, the testimony, the what was her name that secretly recorded Monica Lewinsky?
Linda Tripp.
Linda Tripp. The Linda Tripp papers were released in full on the internet, and that drove people to subscribe to AOL. Internet consumption spiked during the Clinton scandal.
That's not all that they consumed, if you know what I mean.
It's not the only thing that spiked, baby.
All right.
I mean my penis, in case that wasn't clear. And by spiked, I just mean filled with blood to get to messing.
It should be pointed out that Los Angelino listener, The Reloader, who is not Doomkong.
Who is definitely Doomkong.
He's not Doomkong. Because Doomkong keeps registering on DK Vine. I think the Reloader would have given up on that. But anyway, he specifically lamented that there were no Clinton impressions last week. So I said, okay, we'll give you some Clinton impressions this week.
For hook or crook. Yeah.
Beloved Donkey Kong Country 2 enemy crook. So anyway, yeah. You didn't get a Virtual Boy till I suggested it. Because I raved about it. Here's how I first played it. I first played it that August, and I went to Blockbuster Video, another relic from this era, and I rented it because this is how I think this is the first video game system I rented, and it was the only way I could convince my parents, because my parents would usually help chip in for something if I really wanted it. I would have to pay for some of it, and they would throw in the rest if I was almost there, Mm-hmm. Okay, you've done a good job saving and really working towards this. We'll contribute the rest of the way. And I was the only child too, so you got the spoils of that. The Virtual Boy was pretty pricey for the time, and having never played it, it's well, what if you don't like it? So I was able to rent it from Blockbuster Video I think you could rent it for 2 or 3 days. It was some paltry amount of time, but
right. And I remember those console rentals. I mean, that was one of my vectors of attack to wear down my parents, but they were always, it was like $20-$30 as opposed to a $5 VHS rental. So
was it 20-30? I thought you had to put down money, but you got the money back when you brought it back.
I just remember it being prohibitively expensive for my stingy technophobe parents.
Okay, yeah. Do your parents like?
They don't listen to this show, by the way.
Well, no, because they're afraid of the internet. I mean, do they live in a cabin now? I'm picturing them like out in the woods, like Unabomber style, just afraid that Nestor's funky bowling is somehow going to creep in and kill them in their sleep.
No, although until recently, my grandfather lived in a cabin in the woods. But
don't get me wrong, I'm not disparaging cabins in the woods. I myself would love a cabin in the woods someday, but you better believe it's going to have Wi-Fi.
Yeah, and it was an intelligent, although probably overhyped Joss Whedon film.
True, and it also had Bradley Whitford from the West Wing fame and Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip.
Let's not forget
my other favorite dystopian show set in Los Angeles.
I can't wait till Dolphin Girl shows up on Fear the Walking Dead.
I'm sure they're going to blame the cannibalistic attacks on those crazy Christians.
The crazy Christians, yeah.
Good God, crazy Christians. Like, we've made our fair share of jokes on the conversation, but
about Studio 60?
No, about religion. But
sure.
we've never been so straight up insulting as crazy Christians, and that was on NBC. Like, what the fuck?
Well, and not only that, but crazy the sketch series Crazy Christians was meant to be the pinnacle of output from the two most brilliant comedy writers in the world.
Right.
That's what Crazy Christians was supposed to be. Dolphin Girl too, by the way, which is like Goat Boy is better than Dolphin Girl because at least that has the whole 80s premise hanging on it.
It would be one thing if like they straight up like played it that Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, the show in the show was a hacky show, SNL style, that was long past its prime, and this is the shit they were turning out. But no, they played it up that this is brilliant. This is of vital importance. We're bringing integrity back to this show.
Right. It was the tone of Studio 60.
It was the same tone as the West Wing.
It was the West Wing, but yeah, the White House is going to be filled with disproportionately brilliant people. Sketch comedy show.
You would hope at least.
You would hope. At least people who are extremely, dedicated and live and breathe their job, if not complete sociopaths. And there were plenty of those on the West Wing. But a sketch comedy show is not going to have, tip-top executive branch level intelligence. It's just, come on, man.
And then that smug sense of superiority. That's not.
Oh, there's plenty of that in Los Angeles.
Right, but as far as like we're doing important work here.
Yes, important work with a capital I and capital W. Yeah.
Which just gives you a look into the mind of Aaron Sorkin, who I'm sure feels the same way about the newsroom or whatever he turned out.
To be fair, I feel the same way about this show.
Well, but Chad, that's apples and oranges. The show is important.
This is important to the fabric of society.
Yeah, I read The Virtual Boy. I don't care. I'm having fun. This week.
That's what we're trying to do, baby. It's a show about the 90s. How can you not have fun?
I want to ejaculate in his mouth.
I'll have some chicken nuggets, thanks.
I like McDonald's.
Yep. He loves his McDonald's. Thanks, Phil Hartman.
Phil Hartman, also from the 90s.
No, he's not. He's from like the 60s or 50s.
Yeah, but he was around in the 90s.
He certainly was.
He
was
lived
on top of his game in the 90s.
He lived and died in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Sad. Very, very sad.
God, Phil Hartman.
That, unfortunately, will not be the only very sad, untimely death that we discuss in this episode.
That is true. Anyway, so... Yeah, I rented The Virtual Boy, and this was kind of the thing where, like, I got like the briefcase with the Virtual Boy inside, and I rented a couple games for it, and it was surprisingly affordable. I think Blockbuster maybe had a deal on the Virtual Boy, like they partnered with Nintendo, like try it out, because even Nintendo knew this was going to be a hard sell. Or maybe because the way it performed in Japan a month earlier, which made Nintendo of America realize they had to really like scramble to make this work.
Yeah.
So they partner with Blockbuster. Like they really advertise that you can try it at Blockbuster first. You can rent it, and so that's I think why I made the initiative to actually try it out. And it was August '95, so I was starting school like a couple weeks later. So this was kind of like that awful anxiety-ridden time where you're like fighting to preserve your summer, and everybody around you is trying to tell you summer is dead, and you're just like, fuck you, man, fuck you, summer's never gonna die. And so the Virtual Boy was just kind of like this nice like way to distract myself from that battle.
Right. No amount of riding your bike east, a la Pete from Pete and Pete, was going to stave off summer.
Right, but although that was
a New Year's episode.
No, that was the fall equinox, or fall, not equinox, but
I think it was New Year's.
No, because they were changing they were setting back their clocks, and so the goal was to keep traveling through the time zones so they could keep time traveling 1 hour backwards in time.
Okay, I thought it was trying to stave off the end of the year.
No, and they were eating a lot of riboflavin because that helped you time travel.
Time travel, of course. Yeah.
I remember that episode.
Okay. Pete and Pete was a fantastic show, by the way.
Also from the 90s.
It holds up. Pete and Pete is one of those rare shows that I can recommend on this podcast to listeners of this podcast that are not 10 years old.
Oh, yeah. So Toby Huss, who played Artie,
Yeah.
he did an interview in the AV Club the other week, and they talked about Pete and Pete, and he said, he left the show because he felt like, this, it's a good kids show, but I don't want to just be doing a kids show, for several years. He wanted to do other things, and he looks back on it and kind of regrets it because Pete and Pete was just such a brilliant, part of pop culture that's only grown in esteem over the years, and he was like, yeah, I should have just stayed on the show. What was I thinking?
Yeah, because that one Artie-less season really
wasn't great. Yeah. I mean, the writing was suffering at that point too. There were a couple good episodes, but yeah, for the most part, like, anyway.
Also, Steve Buscemi was sort of a breakout a guest star on that show.
Pete had a lot of great guest stars. Iggy Pop. There was
Michael Stipe was in the pilot.
LL Cool J appeared. BB Newworth. They got a lot of like gets on that show.
A lot of musicians.
Anyway, yeah.
Very cool show.
God, I remember like this was also I think 95, maybe they were airing Pete and Pete on SNCC, the Saturday night Nickelodeon lineup. So, man, I remember like playing Donkey Kong Country 2, hitting up the Virtual Boy, and then watching some Pete and Pete on Saturday night, man.
This is all texture, by the way. This is very important to the subject matter of the show.
I want you to get in that 90s spirit, man. Break out the flannel, kick back, do the do.
Hey, most people don't need to break out the flannel anymore. It's kind of come back, so...
Break out your 90s flannel, not that hipster shit. Break out the authentic Seattle flannel.
The really thick shit that like we couldn't wear in Houston because we would die of heat exhaustion.
Right. I want you to go to Seattle, go to Starbucks, wear some flannel, watch Frasier.
Yeah. Thank Courtney Love for the latte.
Right.
Because she has not yet met,
When you say you want an extra shot, make sure she doesn't shoot you in the face. Because she killed Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
Right,
We've all read the papers.
Look it up. I don't care. I'm having fun.
Yeah.
So,
I think when the internet was born, it was nothing but like X-Files news groups and conspiracy theories about Kurt Cobain's murder.
So I got the Virtual Boy home, and I think I don't know if Galactic Pinball was the first game I played, but I honestly don't remember which was the first game I played. But I remember it was first playing the Virtual Boy, and it should be pointed out how this worked if you don't know, and I'm sure you do. But the Virtual Boy, they build it as like you could like wear the thing on your head, the contraption, the visor, whatever you want to call it. Like it's somehow strapped on your head, and you could just play it like laying down. You could play it standing. Like you could play it wherever.
You could walk around the streets playing it.
Right. Well, to be fair, I mean, with the way we're all glued to our smartphones in this day and age,
social commentary,
important social commentary.
Mm-hmm. Hyle, shut up and take my money.
So anyway, so I for like the longest time after I got it out of the Blockbuster briefcase, I was looking for a way to strap it on my head, not realizing that was kind of a bit of marketing sleight of hand. That the only way to play this was on the stand they provide. And that is the critical flaw. That is the biggest flaw of the Virtual Boy that I will cop to this day. It's that it is incredibly uncomfortable to play unless you have the right setup.
Yes,
and
it's the anti-Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. There's no right way to play a Virtual Boy.
Well, I think it gets worse the older you get. But you need to have a table of appropriate height. You need a chair that's positions you right. There's no way to adjust it up or down. You can only angle it.
I would love to somehow waterproof a Virtual Boy and lay back in a sensory deprivation tank that's filled with saline solution.
Oh my god, that would be amazing.
And play Galactic Pinball for hours.
To be fair, the Virtual Boy is a sensory deprivation tank. And that is, I think, the appeal.
That's why so many people have suffocated to death while playing it.
Well, that's the appeal for me, not the suffocating part, but that's like people like, okay, we've all heard the jokes. Oh, you'll go blind playing the Virtual Boy. You'll get hair on your palms.
Make sure you take a break or your eyeballs will explode.
Yeah. I mean, it causes migraines, and for some people, I'm sure that's true.
Right. I would never have Janelle play a Virtual Boy because she does get very bad ocular migraines.
Well, I get terrible migraines like once a week, but I've never gotten migraines from the Virtual Boy, and because I actually there's a feature of the Virtual Boy called automatic pause, and all the games had it, where after you play for a certain time, the automatic pause comes up, which basically means, hey, take a break because you're straining your eyes. And I think this is where the problem comes from, because nobody, including you, listened to this or followed it.
Hell no, dude. I'm going for 1 billion points in Galactic Pinball. I'm not going to take a break.
I actually would always take a short break. I would always take a minute or two and just walk away, and then I would go back to it.
I think the funny thing about taking those breaks is that since you've been staring at the color red, the cones in your eyes are worn out, and when you look out, the world is blue. It's just everything around you is blue.
It was a weird experience pulling away from a Virtual Boy, pulling out of a Virtual Boy, but
lads,
indeed. Innuendo, you might say.
And a callback.
So, I actually listened to Automatic Pause, so I never got the headaches. I never got any of that. And for the record, I don't think anybody ever really strained their vision playing the Virtual Boy. It's a myth that,
Well, no, I don't. I'm sure they did. Otherwise, Nintendo would not have put all those warnings on the box. That was probably part of focus testing.
They put those warnings on the box for litigious reasons. Like, they were thinking ahead, but I don't think anybody actually ever suffered from anything.
I don't know. I feel like they lost a lot of sales by including those warnings, so I have to think that there was a legitimate reason in the testing process that
it's a myth that sitting too close to the TV will make you hurt your vision. Like that's impossible. There's no way for that to actually happen.
We're talking about apples and neon red oranges right now.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not like you're shooting lasers in your eyes either. This is just it's just red tinted shit. I mean, it's just you're just staring very close at a red TV. That's basically all this is.
I won't argue that the fears were picked up by the media and way overblown, but there's a little bit of fire to that smoke.
No. There's no way to hurt the cones in your eyes by sitting too close to anything electronic. Well, the reason,
Hyle Russell, ophthalmologist.
No, look it up. Look it up. All right. I don't need to be a scientist to know that science is a thing. It's like climate change. Look, I may not understand the science 100%, but I trust the scientists who do.
Yeah, you just listen to whatever vice president has the most compelling PowerPoint presentation, and Dick Cheney's is wanting.
I just listened to the vice president who had to mop up Bill Clinton's jizz, and
I just thought that I should clean up if I wanted to inherit this office.
He's very green. He likes cleaning.
Right.
So anyway, it never affected me, and it just Yeah, I don't have any problem with it. You know, if you actually did the automatic pause, like it said, then, you know, you wouldn't get the migraines and you couldn't go blind anyway. So that whole myth is overblown. And every time the Virtual Boy comes up, it's like, oh, you'll go blind. You'll go blind. Shut up. It's like all the good people at Rare left. It's one of those things that will never die.
Yes.
And
yes, I hate that it's become a shorthand reaction to any discussion of the Virtual Boy.
Yeah, and the Virtual Boy, I'm just gonna say it. You know, almost an hour into this episode, the Virtual Boy kicked ass.
It's not a popular opinion.
It's not a popular opinion. How was that?
that was better than your Southern version. Yeah.
Okay, it's not a popular opinion, but it's the classiest red and black system I've ever played.
Since a newspaper, am I right? Trump 2016. I'm not a monster, despite what the sidewalk says. I would love a presidential debate that is Donald Trump responding to things that are scrawled in cement on the sidewalk.
I'm not a monster. That's The Walking Dead. You need to fear that. I am not The Walking Dead. Trump 2016.
We have several years until the toupee singularity renders the top of my head sentient, and maybe then it will be a Walking Dead scenario. Until then, Trump 2016.
I've never played the Virtual Boy because it's a loser. I only play winners.
Now that is actually pretty close to a legitimate quote.
Yeah, the Virtual Boy. Okay, granted, the library of games is not that deep. And that is another failing. That's a failing not of the Virtual Boy's part, but of the fact that Nintendo pulled the plug on it so quickly.
Yeah.
And it kind of shocks me how quickly they gave up on the Virtual Boy, because it would be like giving up on the Wii U. Mm-hmm. And granted, they couldn't really give up on the Wii U, because how would that look? And
I think that, you know, they were a year away from launching the Nintendo 64, and a global marketing push at that caliber is no cheap undertaking. So I think they just realized they may have bitten off too much. Even if the Virtual Boy was selling well, they probably would have had to scale back their ambitions a bit.
Yeah, and that's just it's such weird timing too, because you would think like you would want to hold off on releasing this until after Nintendo Ultra 64 came out.
Right? Yeah, give it a few years, maybe 1998, and the tech would be better, of course.
Yeah, it just I don't know. I never really understood like why summer 1995 was the best time to release this attempted third pillar of Nintendo, you know?
It was a VR craze that they were about a year and a half too late for, and they
or 20 years too early for.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know, but I you know, when you're a kid, you know, you don't really follow like economics, you don't really follow market trends. All you care about is this company's releasing something, I want to play it.
Speak for yourself. I didn't have the internet, so all I did was read the Wall Street Journal.
Oh, you poor child.
And watch Star Trek TOS.
That's really where you developed your firm opinion on the merits of voodoo economics. So.
That's right.
I
am an Adam Smith diehard. Thank you.
Now I really want like a Banjo-Kazooie like financial game starring Mumbo called Voodoo Economics.
There's no way that could be released in this day and age.
No. So I know I rented Galactic Pinball, Mario's Tennis, and I think Tellero Boxer were the first three games I rented. Tellero Boxer. Well, let's just talk about the games, shall we?
We shall.
When did you first buy a Virtual Boy? Like in 2000 or so?
It probably would have been like 99, 2000. Yeah. Off of eBay.
Off of eBay, okay. I was wondering how you got it, because by that point the store sure as hell wouldn't be stocking it.
Yeah. I got that, and I got Wario Land, of course, Mario's Tennis, Mario Clash. I think I have Golf, Tellero Boxer, and of course Galactic Pinball.
Galactic Pinball, right. And let's talk about the experience first of like sticking your head in that visor, that foam visor, that delightful foam visor. So you finally get situated, you get the system angled, and you at the right height, and like you hit that sweet spot, that G spot, or that V spot for the Virtual Boy, and you stick your head in, and the smell. The smell of the Virtual Boy is, and I don't know, I haven't stuck my head in my Virtual Boy.
You know how previously I asked someone to cut together like a techno beat with you saying, I think Dixie is the ideal mate?
Yeah.
I feel like they could isolate you saying the smell and do a lot of good with that clip.
Oh my God, of course you could, yeah.
So I invite the listeners.
There you go, Scraps or Rock. I see both of them attempting something.
The smell.
You stick your head in the smell of the foam. It's an experience that we can't describe in audio form, and I don't even know if the smell would still be in my Virtual Boy. I mean, it's been in that briefcase for a couple years now, and I would imagine it's been preserved to an extent, but who knows?
Mine has not.
Really?
It no longer smells like outer space.
Yeah, for me, Outer Space, because Galactic Pinball is the game we played the most on the Virtual Boy. Outer Space smells like burnt foam rubber. And
it's not really burnt. It's just it has from the manufacturing. It's the benzene, really.
Right? But it's a smell that's the best way to describe it is it smells like something's burning. Right?
No, I don't think that's the best way to describe it at all. It smells synthetic, not
it smells
not
like
carbonized.
Burning tires.
Okay, maybe your Virtual Boy is just constructed from a tire fire. I don't know.
Well, anyway, but it's a delightful smell, whatever it is, and
this is why Hyle thinks that the Universal Studios Springfield Park is woefully underdeveloped. It lacks a tire fire.
I love I love the smell of rubbers and. Okay.
Hey, baby. Not me, clearly.
Why would I ever wear one of those, baby? I just let it fly wherever I want. So this really added to the sensory deprivation experience, because not only was your vision completely blocked off, but the smell kind of was also part of it, where you had no outside senses. You had nothing to disturb you from this world you're being transported in. And it was just this weird alternate red and black universe where it was very spacey. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. It was a very
unlike the
sci-fi experience.
Unlike the Game Boy, the DMG, its background was kind of a brightish shade of yellow or green, whereas the Virtual Boy, every single game, by virtue of the way it was constructed, was red on a black background. So I think that probably one of the reasons Galactic Pinball was space-based to begin with, aside from being a Metroid title, is that, it's a Metroid game, is that it just had to tangle with this black background, and that did give it this sort of outer spacey feel. Every single game had that.
Yeah, that is true, and every single game either took place in space or at night, or the one or two games that didn't try to go for space or night. It still came across that. There's a golf game that I had that it was clearly supposed to be during the day, but it felt like you're playing on the moon.
Yeah. Playing the Spectrum titles, it's a lot like that. It has because those also have that black background.
Yeah, that's true. The Spectrum did have black backgrounds.
Huh.
Weird.
Interesting.
Okay. Don't know why the reason for that is. We'd have to look that up.
Probably the way the Spectrum was constructed, like that, it could probably only draw so many objects on top of a black background, and there was, whereas the NES could color every pixel on the screen easily, I think the Spectrum, by virtue of having predated it, probably didn't have the technical ability to do that. So
Gotcha. Well, anyway, so it was just this spacey sci-fi kind of head trip where you're actually being transported into this alternate universe, this dimension of red and black and stars and space, and this is where my appreciation for this kind of aesthetic came from. And really, there's never been anything like it since. So I don't know what I'm chasing here, but it's just. It's a completely unique gaming experience.
Right.
The games. So let's just go through the games. I'm sure we've played most of the same games, and there's games we didn't play. I think they only released, 14 games for the Virtual Boy?
Yeah, I mean, there are collector sites specifically for the Virtual Boy, and even they have a hard time tracking them all down.
You're right, and there's one or two, I think two that weren't released in North America or outside of Japan at least.
Right.
And then there was actually one or two that were released here that weren't released in Japan. So, it's strange, and there was a lot of Virtual Boy games in development too that were quickly scuttled when it was clear the Virtual Boy was going to be a flop. And the whole point of us talking about the Virtual Boy this episode is one of them was made by Rare, and one of them was a Donkey Kong game, Donkey Kong Country 2, which we'll get to. But
right.
Okay, first of all, we got to just talk about Galactic Pinball first of all, right?
Of course.
Galactic Pinball, what can we say about... Now, this is game, looking it up, doing research for this episode, I looked up the reviews, the scores of Galactic Pinball. It got surprisingly tepid scores.
That's surprising to you.
Middle of the road. People just, reviewers didn't care.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I'm really no longer surprised by reviews that I... How can I phrase this? I'm no longer surprised by reviews that are worse than my assessment, especially in cases where the prevailing popular opinion would make it worse than the way that I think. Because I feel like, to a large extent, games criticism is... They all sort of are sheepish, and they not in that they herd, not in that they're very shy and timid. They all sort of follow this same narrative because none of them want to step out of line and risk their readership.
Right, where we're saying we love the Virtual Boy, so we have no qualms about that.
Right.
I mean, I guess I'm surprised because this was 1995, so it was... I would say several years before I would expect that internet hive mind to kick in. And I would think that people would be a lot more fair about the Virtual Boy, especially when these reviews are coming from publications and the internet wasn't this massive thing and there wasn't this, collective groupthink at the time.
Right.
So maybe that's why I'm surprised, because objectively, playing Galactic Pinball, it kicks ass. It's the best pinball ever on any platform.
I can't disagree with that at all, other than perhaps actual pinball.
No. I honestly, I'm somebody who loves pinball. I love pinball, and even real pinball tables can't match up to Galactic Pinball in my mind.
Galactic Pinball is great.
It's fantastic, and it is the most atmospheric, and I know this is weird because it's a pinball game, but just stay with us. It's the most atmospheric, self-realized Virtual Boy game on the system. It's the game that makes the best use of the hardware.
Yeah, and check out the pedigree. This is the game. By the way, we didn't talk about the origins of the Virtual Boy all that much, but it is the brainchild of Gunpei Yokoi, who, the mastermind behind the Game & Watch and the Game Boy.
Nintendo, what was it, R&D 1?
Yeah,
that was his team. That was his team. Yeah.
So that's the Metroid team as well.
So they always had kind of a funkier, looser vibe than EAD and Miyamoto, where you look at Super Mario Land, their version of Mario,
right?
And it's got all these weird influences, ancient China,
Easter Island,
Egypt. It's kind of got this weird Lost World kind of chasing Atlantis kind of vibe to it.
And it lets you fly around in an airplane and the bad guy is a space alien.
Yeah. So they were a lot more sci-fi oriented to begin with, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think the Virtual Boy is just their magnum opus.
I think it's he was very Gunpei Yokoi was very instrumental in the hardware itself, and Galactic Pinball is the game that he made with that hardware. Much in the way that, they say that Shigeru Miyamoto always develops the new controllers, or at least has input in those new controllers around his gameplay idea. That's Galactic Pinball to the Virtual Boy. Like, if you play a Virtual Boy and you don't play Galactic Pinball, you're really not getting the most out of that system.
Yeah, did you know Galactic Pinball was Gunpei was he supervised it, I believe, but it was made by Intelligent Systems.
Okay.
So I'm just looking that up now. It was basically, and if you have a Virtual Boy, and you should have a Virtual Boy, you should seek it out.
Yeah.
Your library is worthless without Galactic Pinball.
Because the music is phenomenal.
Yeah,
And
who did the music?
The music was by same guy who did Returns. Fuck, it's like slipping my mind now.
Kenji
Yamamoto. Thank
yeah.
you. Yes. He did like the Metroid series, including its best entry, Galactic Pinball. The riots in the streets.
Should have been Galactic Pinball. That's what I say.
And then he did, of course, the Return soundtrack, Donkey Kong Country Returns, before they brought David Wise onto the series. But, Kenji Yamamoto.
I would say this is some of his best work, if not his best. It's so catchy and so. It's okay. We always talk about like the rare composers, especially David Wise and Evelyn Novakovic.
I think Novakovic.
Novakovic. Okay. She'll always be Evelyn Fisher to me. But we always talk about, especially those two, how atmospheric their music is, how it just fits it's almost emanating from the game world, rather than being on top. Like, Grant Kirkhope is very much, and Robin Beanland, although he's more of a chameleon, they very much have, like a kind of a bouncier kind of vibe to them that it complements the game world very well, but it's not emanating from it.
Well, yeah, I think, Grant is very melodic, and Robin can do the atmospheric. That's
what I said. Like
anything that any musical genre. If you look no further than Kongversation for the proof of this, Robin Beanland can do no wrong. He's able to somehow dissect every type of music and make extremely high quality examples of that genre.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to put that in there, because I said Robin Beanland. I was like, well, he's more of a chameleon, so But David Wise and Evelyn, surname to be determined, both are known for that. They brought it with the Donkey Kong Country series,
especially Part 3. I think the Evelyn's score.
Well, look at what she did for Part 1, and look at David Wise stuff for Part. I mean, they're both very much. I mean, David Wise's work on Star Fox Adventures too. But so I don't normally associate that with good old Kenji here, but that's really what Galactic Pinball was. Like it was music that fit the game world so perfectly that it was almost coming from the game world.
Yeah, and some of the songs, like the credits song, Gunpei's Voyage, and by the way, the score it's seeped out onto the internet because in the year 2000 I ripped it and put it out there on like LimeWire and Kazaa and
Napster, right?
Napster as well, yeah. And it's another one of those that I named all the tracks, and those kind of exist to this day, including Moonman's Fandango.
Didn't I help name Moonman's Fandango?
You might have, yeah. I remember the Moonman weird obsession was something that originated from you. So
right, when we didn't know Mac Tonight's name, McDonald's mascot Mac Tonight, so we just called him the Moonman in all caps, which I prefer. I think that's a better name. But,
right. But like I loved how when you would boot up the system, it's just like these. It's just these beeps and boops that are like from a space station. Yeah. Welcome to Space World. Let's go.
Yeah, it's burned in my brain, much like the Virtual Boy seared its red and black into my eyeballs.
Yeah. Like they literally yell at you when you start the game. Welcome to Space World. Let's go.
Right.
It's so great. It's so great.
And was that like a nod to Nintendo's Space World show?
I think it might just be, really endearing English. I don't know, but I love it.
Yeah, but yeah, it's Galactic Pinball. Like, it's a pinball game, but it's also there's something going on there. It's a world unto itself. Like, yes, these are ostensibly like virtual pinball tables, but they're floating in space, and there's stuff going on inside of them.
Yeah,
to the point where like you've got like the colony. You've got like a spacefaring colony that's set up, and they've got like routine like asteroids that like bombard them, so they have this defense system, and it's oh my god, it's just so much to do.
Like one of the boards takes place, I assume, around Jupiter's orbit, because you go through like a series of challenges that are named after all the moons of Jupiter. There's like a Ganymede, there's a Callisto.
Well, I don't know, because there's I think maybe Colony or something. There's like Andromeda is one of them.
Oh, you're right. Okay, so maybe it starts in Jupiter's orbit and goes out beyond the Milky Way galaxy.
I don't know. I mean, it's all across the galaxy.
Yeah.
There's the alien one where you have to like defeat the various alien heads that pop up, the evil like warlords that pop up.
Yeah. And do you remember UFO with Galax Skull?
Yeah.
I think I named him Galax Skull because I needed a name for that music. But
because even then we had to name characters.
but yeah, on the UFO stage, and that was the one. That's the one that I would always grind on to get high score, and I never achieved my 1 billion point score. I think I only got to 300 million, but. You did make a trophy for yourself, Galactic Warrior, Chad McCanna Galactic Warrior, with your Galactic Pinball score on it, right? I did, yeah. I went to one of those. Oh my god, I had forgotten about that. Yeah, you could those places you could go for like Little League soccer trophies. I made myself a Galactic Warrior trophy for my Galactic Pinball high score. I wonder where that is. It's probably in my parents' attic somewhere.
I swear when we lived in L.A., you had it on your desk. But
did I really? Oh
yeah.
My god. I need to track it down. That's amazing. Yeah, I had totally forgotten about that trophy. What a bizarre thing to do. I'm a fucking weirdo. I made a trophy for myself with my Galactic Pinball high score. But no, what you would do on UFO is like you have to hit the puck, and it's not a pinball, it's a puck.
Space puck is what we call it.
Yeah, the space puck. And we always wanted the space puck to get into Super Smash Brothers.
You're right. Although I think Jeff Onan had a better idea for he suggested just having the Virtual Boy itself be a character, and it projects stuff from the Virtual Boy, like in Smash Brothers, like
oh yeah, it'd be like an ATST.
Yeah. But like Mr. Game & Watch celebrates all of the Game & Watch games. The Virtual Boy could do the same.
Yeah, well, and same as
Duck Hunt.
Duck Hunt does all the NES, or the shooter games.
Right, Light Gun, yeah. Zapper.
The Zapper. So, yeah, you would hit the puck into this little pocket, and if you did it the right number of times, this skull would descend inexplicably from out of the UFO, a giant skull. And you would have to defeat it by hitting the puck into various positions, and ultimately I think it would give you like 10 million points for doing that. And so if you grinded on it, just did it over and over, ultimately that was the quickest board to rack up a high score. My favorite board was Colony, though.
Colony, yeah. I was going to say Colony is the board I got the highest scoring because it was just the most fun to play. Like, there's just so much to do. That's the board where every so often asteroids would bombard, and I think they would pick up, in frequency the longer you played. So
and those asteroids would fly at the screen, of course, and and the puck would turn into this like POV sighting system, like the first boss of Battletoads.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
And the asteroids would be flying at you, much like it was ABC's 3D week, and you were watching Tim the Toolman Taylor shoot sleigh string at the camera.
Right. Here comes Steve Urkel with a bubble gun.
Here comes Ellen. She just came out of the closet. We're having a 3D episode.
Whoa! That door hit me in the face. And America was never the same.
That was a good thing.
No, it was a good thing. It was just like it's telling of the times how big a deal it was that Ellen DeGeneres came out as a lesbian. Like, if that happened today, people are like, oh, okay. Which is fantastic. It's crazy.
Like I said, it's strange how puritanical things were 20 years ago.
Right.
So strange.
Yeah.
Because I look back at fondness on this time period. I'm very nostalgic for it, obviously, but I don't think I'd want to actually live back in that time because it would just infuriate me.
Well, yeah, especially, that would be an interesting fish out of water premise to just go back, like, not 100 years, just, 15 years. And there would be these little idiosyncrasies of the time that
right, there should be like a Back to the Future style movie where instead of like a teenager or like instead of a teenager traveling back to when his parents were teenagers, it should be somebody in their like early 30s time traveling back to when they were a teenager or an adolescent and just getting pissed off at how backwards the world was.
Right.
Yes, and of course, we've alluded to it, but this was a Metroid game because Samus, or at least Samus piloting her ship,
the gunship.
It was a mini game
on the Cosmic board.
Cosmic, yes, it was in Cosmic, and I don't know how I forget how you activated it, but it would pop up.
Oh, I do. I remember there were these Metroid drones that would fly down on the screen. And you would have to defeat enough of them. Oh, no. That's actually what the minigame was.
That's what the minigame was, yeah.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I don't remember how you activate it, but yeah, then the Metroid theme would start playing, which, Mr. Yamamoto is doing the score, so he did a rendition of his own music. And yeah, you would basically play a Galaga minigame starring Samus.
Yeah, and the announcer would come on and like say something like "Let's go, Samus," and
right, yeah,
and it was cool. And even then, like I knew like who Samus was, and I was like, oh my god, it's a Metroid game, what? And so to this day, I think we both hold that up as the best Metroid game. No offense to Retro Studios and their work, but
I mean, in fairness, Super Metroid and the first Metroid Prime are far better than Galactic Pinball.
We're just assholes.
Right. But this is this is certainly not a part of the Metroid legacy that should be swept under the rug. And
but
I can't
it always
imagine.
It always is. Like nobody like ever like references. Like I guess let's go to Metroid Wiki and see if they actually talk about Galactic Pinball because it's gonna piss me off if they don't.
Yeah. So while you're doing that, let's briefly move on from Galactic Pinball to discuss some of the other titles like Mario's Tennis. This might have, I think. You probably had to discover Galactic Pinball, but this probably would have been the first game you put in, if not Wario Land.
Okay. Galactic Pinball does not have its own page on Metroid Wiki. It's only on list of cameos and crossovers.
Boo!
Yeah, fuck you, Metroid Wiki.
Yeah, Metroid Wiki. Galactic Pinball is more than a footnote.
Galactic Pinball is a better Metroid pinball game than Metroid Prime Pinball, so...
That is absolutely true. That is 100% true, and I
remember we got so excited about Metroid Prime Pinball because we were thinking it was going to be like Galactic Pinball
the sequel to Galactic Pinball.
Yeah, that's the way we build it in our heads, and so I mean I played it, but it was just not the same. And to be fair, there's no way you could replicate that the whole Galactic Pinball vibe, considering it was again the immersion of the Virtual Boy. There's just no way to bring that back.
Well, and part of the cool genius of the way that Galactic Pinball's boards were set up is that, unlike the Game Boy pinball games, you wouldn't have to constantly flip between the upper and lower screen to get the full board. They sort of angled them back and made them 3D, so you could see the whole pinball board in one screen. It
was actually like a real pinball table in that regard.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, so yeah, Mario's Tennis.
Right. I enjoyed this one. It definitely made good use of the 3D.
Yeah, it's interesting. This predates Camelot's Mario Tennis games. I mean, I always think of Mario Tennis for the N64 being ground zero for the Mario Tennis series, but nope. This game existed.
There wasn't an NES Tennis that had Mario characters, much like golf?
I don't know. Like there was I really don't recall. I don't think so. I think this might have been the first one, but okay. This was came out in 95. Of course, it was the launch title, and I think it was packaged in the system, right?
Yeah, it had to have been.
Yeah, it was. And so this was that weird time period where Donkey Kong Country was very much a thing and very much like everywhere, but they still like weren't putting Donkey Kong like proper in these games. It was the arcade Donkey Kong Jr. So it's interesting and this continued like for several years. But after the buyout, that's when they really, Mario Kart 64 helped stop that practice. Like that broke down the barrier of actually putting in the Donkey Kong Country Donkey Kong.
That was someone besides Rare actually using that version of DK.
Right. I'm just saying though that like they still use the arcade style Donkey Kong up till Game & Watch Gallery 4 in 2002. Right. So it was the buyout that really stopped it and really like said, okay, we've got to like retire this version of the character. You know, we're going to use the Donkey Kong Country versions from here on out.
Right. It's like they just had to acknowledge, okay, yes, Rare's version is far more popular. That's the version we'll go with.
Right. So it was weird that there was this discontinuity between these games and the Donkey Kong Country games, and then later the cameo games that featured the Donkey Kong Country Donkey Kong. So it was almost like two separate realities. And even to this day, we don't really acknowledge this as any sort of like prehistory for Donkey Kong, because it's really hard to fit this anywhere in the canon. But there you go.
What is Mario Clash?
I wasn't done talking about Mario's Tennis.
Oh, I didn't realize there was more to discuss. We all know it's a glorified Pong, right?
Putting your foot in your mouth, Chad.
Yeah,
but it's 3D, so the foot's coming right at you.
I've already extricated my foot from my mouth on that particular issue.
I liked Mario's Tennis. This was a solid game. I played it quite a bit. Probably I played this the most after Galactic Pinball. It was fun. I remember it had that spacey vibe, but also it was kind of like this magical vibe to it too, by virtue of it being the Mushroom Kingdom. It kind of had this I don't know, just this kind of surreal, like you'd see like the castles in the background, and it would kind of be like the playing the NES and SNES Mario games on acid. That's basically the best way I can describe it. And like everything was at night. You had the twinkly stars and in the sky, and yeah, I liked
that's one of the things I loved about Super Mario World's special area is that it did feel like kind of outer space. And even the cave levels where the backgrounds were just really dark and sparkly.
Yeah.
I always preferred those because they give off a spacey vibe. I think space and Mario go very well together. And I think the Galaxy games are perfect proof of that.
See, I think the Galaxy games are almost too cartoony with the space, though. Like, I don't know. I like to see. I don't want to see like a hard, gritty sci-fi take on Mario, like Mario directed by Ridley Scott. But I don't know. It's
for fuck's sake, Mario, just run at a right angle. You'll survive the giant crushing wheel.
Oh God! They're making Prometheus too.
Are they? Mm-hmm. Does it star Michael Fassbender's head and Charlize Theron, or is it just like a completely separate story?
No, Charlize Theron died.
Did she? Who's the one who survived?
The one who
it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
The girl with the dragon tattoo.
Numi. Yes.
Yeah.
The one who's the sister of the one from House of Cards.
No. That's the American girl with the dragon tattoo.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm getting all sorts of layers of David Fincher confused.
Anyways, yeah, and I remember Mario's Tennis. Even though I didn't hold it as any sort of canon with Donkey Kong Country, I still played as Donkey Kong Jr. I was that much of a loyalist. I would have to play as him and nobody else.
I think I did the same.
Oh yeah. Mario Clash.
By the way, just quickly, in defense of Super Mario Galaxy, play the Dreadnought Galaxy. I think that is tonally the pinnacle of Space Mario.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The Dreadnought Galaxy. The music's great. The vibe is great. It's sci-fi, but not too hard. It's good.
I think I'm just put off by the the initial areas of Mario Galaxy, the one that, and the areas that are then replicated everywhere you see. As,
the big bright sunny ones that are kind of where there's dandelions that you have to wind up on and stuff.
Yeah.
No, it gets more traditional spacey later on, and the gravity mechanic is badass.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
It's
Mario,
a good game. It gets too much hate.
really, it gets hate. I thought
It
everybody
does. Well, there's okay. So now
I
there's
thought everybody
like
loved it.
everyone loved it and like unequivocally, but now Mario Galaxy, there is a contingent of Mario Sunshine fans, which is also a good game. The physics are a little wonky in Sunshine, but you know, it's like for some reason people treat the Mario 3D platformer series like Highlander. Like, come on, there could be multiple really good installments. We don't have to just shit on one at the expense of the other. Anyway. What
so,
the hell is Mario Clash?
You never play Mario Clash.
I don't
then.
think so.
Okay, Mario Clash was a Virtual Boy update on the original Mario Brothers arcade game.
Okay.
Basically, I don't think Luigi's in it at all. You play as Mario, and you're in this giant like skyscraper, and you're ascending one floor at a time. And it's in the style of Mario Brothers arcade, except it's 3D. So you've got like two planes. You've got the foreground and the background.
Okay.
And you've got like the enemies from Mario Arcade, who the not Koopa Troopas, the shell creepers or whatever they're called, and you've got the crabs and whatnot, and you have to just defeat them across both planes. And it was okay. I've never been a fan of Mario Brothers Arcade to begin with. It's never appealed to me. Didn't when I was a kid, doesn't now. I think it's just kind of this weird blip between Donkey Kong and Super Mario Brothers.
So I think it's really it needs to be played 2-player to get the most out of it.
Yeah, maybe that's the case. But now Mario Clash was all right. It was. I never really progressed that far in it because I just got bored with it. But it's probably the best version of the arcade game I've ever played, if that's any consolation.
Yeah, I think probably the best appropriation of the arcade game that I've seen was one of the NES remix things on the Wii U, where it kept backing the camera out so that the areas that it loops horizontally, you actually see multiple instances of that screen pasted all over your screen, which really gets confusing because you're controlling 20 Marios at once.
Yeah.
That was a pretty cool use of that, but
Mario Power Tennis had a great Mario Brothers Arcade court. It was styled like Mario Brothers Arcade, and it had like a lot of like the graphics and elements, and that was cool.
Crabs and stuff.
Yeah, crabs and stuff. Yeah.
Hey,
baby. So Virtual Boy Wario Land, the clunkiest title imaginable, but what do you think about this one?
I really liked it. I would put this easily number 2 under Galactic Pinball.
Well, this is often touted as the only good game on the Virtual Boy, which is a misnomer. As we've already mentioned, Galactic Pinball is fantastic. But
this is the more easily accessible.
It is. And it's also it's also got that cred, among platforming fans, because people love the Wario Land series. It's Wario Land is a series that you can enjoy even if you don't like Mario, which, I mean, who doesn't like Mario except me? But no, it was a fun game. This is actually the first Wario Land game I played, shockingly enough.
Yeah. It was, I think that it's cool. This one, the big gimmick, the big feature was that you could jump into the foreground and background, and it made great use of the Virtual Boy's capabilities. And it's surprising that Nintendo really didn't play with this idea until Donkey Kong Country Returns.
Yeah, and I don't even know if this directly influenced that aspect of Donkey Kong Country Returns. Did you hear anything about that?
I don't know. There might have been an Iwata Asks where, yes, indeed, Wario Land was a big inspiration. Had only one of the team ever played it, laughs.
That would and it would require Nintendo acknowledging the Virtual Boy and
there would be a footnote of like 8 paragraphs describing what the Virtual Boy is.
Yeah, considering how sheepish Nintendo is about the legacy of the Virtual Boy, which hopefully is loosening a bit in this day and age. But the Virtual Boy Wario Land, it was very much a great platformer that made great use of the Virtual Boy. I loved it, but of course I played it thinking, imagine what Rare could do with a Donkey Kong game like this, you know?
Yeah.
So, of course, I played it just picturing the game I really wanted in my head. So that's a problem I had during this era too, where I could never really. I was such an absolutist Donkey Kong Country fan at this point that I didn't allow myself to enjoy too many games that weren't that, because I was always busy imagining what Donkey Kong Country or what Rare could do with this style of game. So I would like to go back and actually replay this. I got quite far in it. I don't think I ever beat it, but I would like to go back and try it now, 20 years later, and see if it holds up.
No, I did actually beat it. I don't remember what happens when you beat it, but I remember giving it a full playthrough, and it's a lot of fun.
Didn't it take place in like the it was a pun on the Amazon. It was the I can't even say it. Awazon?
Probably.
Yeah.
Because of the M to the W.
Right.
Yeah.
So this really played up the whole Wario is a treasure hunter. Wario is a treasure hunter. I always get shit for not pronouncing Wario right.
Are you going to war or are you going to war?
War. Well, what is it supposed to be?
I don't know, but yeah, we do get shit from. Usually, it's the Australians that want us to talk about Yashi and Wario.
Yashi and Wario. Oh, that or the Japanese absolutists who are like, it's actually
T Yoshikupa Zillosaurus or whatever.
Yeah,
bunch of Koopas. Yeah,
Koopal, and yeah, like the in the Japanese canon, it's pronounced like this, and you're saying it wrong, you stupid white bastard.
It's not Toad, it's Canopio. Damn it.
Yeah. Now, Virtual Boy Wario Land's a great game. I think I'm surprisingly coming across as tepid towards it when I think it's a great game.
You shouldn't. I think that might just be conversational fatigue, because Virtual Boy Wario Land is quite good.
And I think it's because I think Galactic Pinball is the game I really pushed for as the pinnacle of the Virtual Boy. So for me, like, to have this game come along and try to steal the thunder from Galactic Pinball and see Galactic Pinball getting such middling reviews, it's just kind of like, no, that's not the way I understand reality. What's wrong with you people? It's a great game. Check it out.
Yeah. We should power through some of the others, because we do need to talk about the DKC2.
Oh, baby, I've got all day.
Our listeners don't.
Okay, well, to be fair, we don't really have much to say about the others, because this is where things start to get a little dodgy.
Wait, are you telling me that you don't have another 45 minutes in you to discuss Nestor's Funky Bowling?
Surprisingly, I could probably pull out about 43 minutes towards Nestor's Funky Bowling.
Okay,
but
the other 2 minutes would be reserved for Waterworld.
Well, okay. Tellero Boxer is a game you played, right?
I think so. Yeah.
It's a game I own, and it was one of the initial ones I rented. This is a disappointment, though. This is a hard game, and I remember, like, I could beat, like, basically you're boxing in the first-person perspective against these robots. Mm-hmm. And so you have to, like, dodge, you have to, punch. They would have been better off just making probably a punch-out game, but this game, I don't want to say it was shit, but it was just impossible to progress after a certain point. And maybe I was just shit at it, and I'm taking it out on the game.
Maybe it should be re-released with a rewind feature.
Maybe that's the case, but
it's too difficult for our young brains to grasp.
It was frustrating, and I only got to the second boxer ever. I never really beat him, and I don't know.
He's laughing at you to this day.
Yeah, they laughed at you. Yeah, fine. Teller Boxer. Hey, it was just... That deserves middling reviews, not Galactic Pinball.
Right.
Red Alarm was the wireframe Star Fox knockoff.
Yeah, I remember this one.
And the wireframe, you didn't really know what the hell was going on some of the time, because it was just hard to decipher the graphics. And it worked okay with the 3D, but even then, you didn't really know what things were supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. The Virtual Boy was basically two Game Boy screens kind of grafted together, one for each eye.
I mean, it was a lot more powerful than a Game Boy.
Not a lot.
It was a 32-bit system.
That was probably for the Z-index processing, but the the graphics were 4-color. I mean, it definitely felt like a Game Boy system, like two Game Boys side by side, as far as the horsepower that you could get out of it. Like the SNES, the 16-bit SNES was a lot more powerful, seemingly, than the quote-unquote 32-bit Virtual Boy.
Oh, this was a lot more powerful than a Game Boy, though. I mean, I think you're not remembering things. I mean,
maybe it's just the way the visuals go off, but it seems to be like the SNES would have been a lot better at rendering and visualizing 3D than you ever got out of the Virtual Boy.
yeah, I mean, the 3D effects were great. I mean,
There was no Mode 7 in the Virtual Boy, let's put it that way.
okay. Now, the 3D effect itself in the Virtual Boy was, I think, terrific, and, it really served it well when it used it right, but I don't think the wireframe thing meshed well with it.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was also a golf game called Golf.
That's a thing that happened.
This was made by a third party. It wasn't made by Nintendo. I had Golf. I think it was the last Virtual Boy game I ever bought, and it was fine. Well, they all went clearance, by the way. The reason I was able to afford so many Virtual Boy games was they all went clearance, and so you could get them on the cheap, and it was fantastic. Yeah, Golf was Golf. It was funny. I alluded to it earlier. It was supposed to ostensibly take place during the day, but because of the Virtual Boy, it looked like you were playing at night on like the surface of the moon, and I really appreciated that about Golf.
Yeah. It took inspiration from that hit REM single, Night Golfing.
Was that really?
Night Swimming.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was a bit of a stretch, Chad.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
We were going 90s. We talked about Michael Stipe earlier, and I figured I'd go for it, but obviously a swing and a miss.
It's much like Golf for the Virtual Boy.
Much like every time I try and play golf.
All right, there was also
Mulligan 2, Mulligan 3.
Michelle and I, whenever we're at Virginia Beach, there's we always play miniature golf because there's two miniature golf courses right across the street from one another. There's jungle golf, and then there's pirate golf, and so it's very much like Donkey Kong Island and Crocodile Isle facing off against each other. Anyway, so I get really, really like hardcore with the rules. I do not allow mulligans. You have to play the ball from wherever it lands.
So
Yeah.
if it's in the freeway separating the two mini golf courses,
Yep,
play it through.
play it through. That's right.
You stand there sternly with your half pencil and scorecard watching Michelle dodge traffic.
I'm a great fiance.
Yeah.
So there were also games released here in the West that we didn't personally play. Maybe you played some of these, but I sure as hell didn't.
No.
The aforementioned Nestor's Funky Bowling, which I kind of want to play now. But I think it was the next to last game released for the Virtual Boy, and by that point, they were like basically impossible to find in stores.
Yeah.
Nestor's Funky Bowling stars, believe it or not, a original character from Nintendo Power magazine called Nestor. He was the star of their comic strips in the early days of Nintendo Power.
Yeah.
They had retired them by the time I started reading Nintendo Power. So Nestor wasn't even an active part of Nintendo Power at the time of Nestor's Funky Bowling.
Is this Nestor's only video game?
He might. I think he cameoed in like Pilot Wing 64.
Okay.
Or in some capacity. I don't know how, but yeah, Nestor's Funky Bowling was, I think, his only starring role. Yeah.
Wow. Good for you, Nestor. You finally made it.
Which I always wanted to see Nestor appear in Smash Brothers, because that would be like a great like obscure Nintendo character that would reference a particular aspect of Nintendo.
Yeah.
But
he fights you with the power of biased reviews.
But knowing Sakurai's affinity for Japan-based characters, I don't think we'll ever see him so long as he's in charge.
Well, and also it's not a video. I mean, yes, I know we just established it's a video game character, but it's not a video game character.
Yeah, it's a Nintendo character, though, owned by Nintendo, I mean, it would reference Nintendo media outside of video games. Anyway, that's another argument. Jack Brothers, I don't know anything about Jack
Jack Bros.
Jack Bros, which sounds like, I don't know, Sounds like some sort of weird mutual masturbation game in that household.
Well, there's a reason there were 2 D-pads on the Virtual Boy.
Oh yeah, we didn't talk about the controller for the Virtual Boy.
It's a strange controller.
Well, it's surprisingly like similar to the N64 controller in that it has 2 prongs on the outside. This is why I hold the N64 controller wrong.
That must be it.
Because I held I hold the N64 controller like I hold the Virtual Boy controller.
Wow. I don't understand how you're able to do some of the like precision platforming in Banjo-Tooie.
I don't understand how you're able to hold the middle. Like, the middle prong, to me, it's just so imprecise.
How the fuck are you hitting the Z trigger?
I've got big hands. What can you know what they say about big hands? They help you hit the Z trigger.
That is exactly how the old saying goes.
So I hold the N64 controller wrong. I hold it on the 2 outside prongs. Chad holds it correctly with his left hand on the middle prong and his right hand on the right hand side. And but the reason I hold it wrong is because the Virtual Boy has the 2 outside prongs and no middle prong, so you have to hold it like that.
There is yet another strange third way to hold the controller, which is the McCanna technique, which is not a joke. He actually, from what I've been told, holds the control stick with his thumb and forefinger as if he were operating a tiny joystick.
What?
Yeah.
How does that work?
I don't know how yours works, much less his.
Fair enough. More power to you, Matt. Jack Brothers, I don't know, it was like some sort of Halloween-based game. Not like Michael Myers Halloween, but like, I think they were like jack-o'-lanterns or clowns or I don't know what the fuck they were. I don't care. Jack Brothers is a game that existed. Virtual League Baseball, I didn't play this.
Yeah,
I don't know.
They finally let Negroes into the virtual leagues.
Oh my god.
What?
The first time the word Negro has been used on the Kongversation.
Come on, baseball history.
It's baseball history. It still feels so ugly, though.
It's enormously ugly. But, thanks to the preservation powers of Ken Burns, we're all going to face it.
Virtual League Baseball was not put out by Nintendo. I think it was made by the same people who made Golf. Don't quote me on that though. But I'm surprised, given the time period, Nintendo didn't have a Ken Griffey Jr. game in the wings for the Virtual Boy, considering they own the Mariners. Ken Griffey Jr. was the star of the Mariners. They made Rare make a Ken Griffey Jr. game, for Christ's sake. So,
right. Which is an honorable mentions, I believe.
Because the DK logo appears on the billboards.
Yeah, people are screaming for DK in the stands at the Mariners Stadium.
We should go to a Mariners game and just do that. I'm sure Howard Lincoln would be there somewhere in the stadium looking down on us, frowning.
I wonder if Mario has ever thrown out the first pitch at a Mariners game.
I'm sure Nintendo of America still owns the Mariners. I'm surprised they don't do anything with that.
Yeah. Why don't they just rebrand the team?
Yeah, the Guards.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
That could be that inexplicable second on guard at the bottom of Coral Capers. That's the Seattle Mariner.
So the Seattle Mariners are nothing but a bunch of holograms?
That's right.
Speaking of water-based creatures, the final game, Waterworld, based on the Kevin Costner flop of the same name.
Now you jest, Hyle, but Waterworld for Virtual Boy is my favorite urine drinking simulator.
I've never played Waterworld. I never had any desire to play I have desire now to play Waterworld because, come on. But back then, I didn't care about Waterworld. It's how 90s can you get? How mid-90s can you get?
Yeah. All this reminds me of is that Waterworld arcade game that Millhouse played.
Oh, I don't remember. I vaguely remember that joke.
Yeah, the joke was on, they're trying to recoup Waterworld's budget, and so he takes one step, and then it says, insert 40 quarters to continue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but this is like the epitome of 1995. Not only did you have one of the biggest, financial flop in Hollywood history at that time,
Right.
but you had it on Nintendo's biggest flop of a system. So Waterworld for the Virtual Boy, that must just feel great about itself.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's like a perfect nexus of terrible 90s ideas.
To be fair, the Virtual Boy wasn't a terrible idea.
Well, okay.
We'll get into our closing thoughts. But
right.
so obviously I bought a Virtual Boy. I bought a Virtual Boy when I knew the system was failing. Like I think I finally got my Virtual Boy in early 96.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even spring 96 when it was officially dead. But Nintendo was still like pushing it like through the end of 96.
That's why you didn't own Waterworld, because it was released as part of the Virtual Boy Ambassador program.
Nintendo was still pushing the Virtual Boy, at least Nintendo of America was, until the end of 96, because they wanted to sell off like remaining stock. And they slashed the price, and I got it when they slashed the price. I knew at that point that like there was not going to be a rare game for the Virtual Boy, but part of me still held out a little hope. I remember my big idea for a Virtual Boy game was Swanky Kong. Swanky Kong should get his own game for the Virtual Boy because it seemed like a natural fit. I still think that to this day. I remember like I had a dream, and this dream stuck with me. It was like Swanky's like virtual disco or something. Mm-hmm. And I had a dream about that really like stuck with me, and I still want my Swanky Kong game for the Virtual Boy game.
I was just gonna say like I've already put the racial politics of the Kongversation back several decades by referring to the Negro Leagues, and here you are saying that you have a dream for a Swanky Kong game.
What? Wait. Why is that? Well, what are the racial
because
politics behind
it's a
Swanky
horrendous
Kong?
misappropriation of Martin Luther King Jr.
What?
Isn't that what you were going for?
No, I literally had a dream one night about a Swanky Kong.
Oh, I thought this was like a metaphorical dream of a brighter future for our children.
No,
One day they'll be able to walk hand in hand down the street with Virtual Boys strapped to their faces playing Swanky Kong games.
To be fair, that's a great dream to have. But no, I literally dreamt one night about a Swanky Kong game for the Virtual Boy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was like, I was trying to figure out the correlation there. I was like, was Martin Luther King a game show host at one point? Did he run a carnival? Like, what are you talking about?
No, I thought you were doing a Sermon on the Mount. I'm sorry.
Sermon on the Mount? That's Jesus.
No, I know, but that's, his whole, I've been to the mountaintop. Yeah, whatever. No.
Okay.
Come on.
He's like, wow, was Jesus a game show host?
No. I mean, it was the metaphorical comparison to the whole march in Washington and blah, 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 blah. I know my history, man.
Yeah, okay. So at the time, this was, I think 96, and, Virtual Boy was dead in the water world, and, all I had were my shattered dreams about, possible DKU games for the system. So flash forward several years when we're actually on America Online and we're writing into Scribes, starring Mr. Lee Loveday on the rare
starring
on the Rare website.
Yes.
And I don't know if I was the one who asked him, if you asked him, or if some random non-us person asked him.
Yeah, it was either you, me, Aussie Ben, or potentially someone else.
Potentially someone else, yeah. so
Probably, I would give it like an 80% chance that it was one of the three of us.
Considering I like sent him like weekly questions, I'm sure I got this in at some point. I don't know if he actually took mine as the go-to one, but yeah, somebody asked him, did you guys ever have anything in development for the Virtual Boy? Like a Donkey Kong? Did you guys have a Donkey Kong game in development for the Virtual Boy?
Yeah.
This was pre-buyout too, so we were a lot more comfortable asking these questions back then. And he responded, I think it might have been my question, because I remember writing to Nintendo asking, is there going to be a Donkey Kong Land game for the Virtual Boy? Because in my mind, this is the way the progression would have gone had the Virtual Boy stayed successful.
Mm-hmm.
Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong Land, Donkey Kong Country 2, Donkey Kong Land 2, Donkey Kong Country 3, Donkey Kong Land 3, Donkey Kong World or something for the Nintendo 64.
The Ultra.
And then Donkey Kong Virtual Land for the
Virtual Land,
or Donkey Kong Land Virtual Boy, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
I thought Nintendo positioned the Virtual Boy as a third pillar, but I also thought it could be like the successor to the Game Boy over time. And so I thought like it would be standing side by side with the Nintendo Ultra 64. And so if there were going to be console versions of Donkey Kong Country on the 64, then you would get versions of Donkey Kong Land for the Virtual Boy. It made sense in my young brain at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And this was before like Mario Kart 64 and spin-off games and things like that became the norm. But so I might have asked him, like, was there ever Donkey Kong Land in development for the Virtual Boy? And Lee responded. He said, it wasn't Donkey Kong Land. It was actually Donkey Kong Country 2, but we only got as far as the title screen.
Wow.
So obviously, this is enough for us to build a whole episode around the Virtual Boy. But we made several you made several mock-up screenshots for Donkey Kong Land or Donkey Kong Country 2 Virtual Boy.
I did, yeah, and those have actually been circulated outside our control or wishes as screenshots of this game that never existed.
Yeah. And to be fair, they look remarkable. Like,
thanks. I took screenshots from DKC2. I think the two that I made were roller coaster one.
You made three.
Did I make three?
You made the roller coaster, Brambles, and then you made the end scene with the Crocodile Isle.
Ah, yes, I forgot that one. So what I did was I got the exact 4 shades of red that were used on the Virtual Boy.
By the way, 4 Shades of Red is my favorite piece of erotica.
I'll allow that line of joking because you haven't used the formula in a while.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's when you ride the red tide. That's when.
Oh boy. So.
Moving on with your BDSM.
Moving on.
Okay.
I actually isolated the sprites by hand, and I only would use like the 3 lightest colors, and I would interpolate them as like a nearest neighbor match, as opposed to the backgrounds, which I would do all 4 colors, or maybe the lowest 3, including black, and I would dither those so that the foreground elements would stand out from the background elements, which is a lot of what they did with the graphics on the Virtual Boy. So, like, it wasn't just a matter of turning it all red. They did stand out quite a bit.
Well, I mean, to this day, they are, and I'm going to blow smoke up your ass here, so be ready.
Boy.
To this day, it's the most accurate mock-up of a Virtual Boy game I've ever seen. Like, you see, like, other ones online of fake Virtual Boy games or Virtual Boy tribute art, never comes anywhere close to what you did with those 3 screenshots. So much so that I wish you would do more, because I want to see more in that style.
It was so fucking laborious. Time intensive, because those were in the days before Photoshop, or at least I didn't have Photoshop. I was using Paint Shop Pro for that, which didn't have layers.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so like I would do the red and black translation, and then I would take it into MS Paint, crop out the part that I want, get it on the transparent background, and then paste that back. Thankfully, it preserved an alpha channel when you would paste from Paint into Paint Shop Pro. It was God, it was a mess and really frustrating to do, but I'm never doing it again.
I've put them on our Facebook page. I love those. Those are just terrific.
I wonder though if in the process of digging through all the old material for Rare Replay, if Rare's digital archivist Craig Whitehouse ever encountered this menu screen for DKC2VB.
The title screen or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. And of course, since it would be Nintendo, that vague area where it's kind of owned by Nintendo, but not really. We'll probably never see it in any official capacity.
Of course not.
It would have to be leaked out by somebody. But much to our chagrin, those have actually been circulated in certain corners of the internet as official screenshots from the game.
It never got that far, not even close.
No. I've also seen...
Oh my god, you know what I just could have done?
What?
I just could have fucking taken Donkey Kong Land 2 screenshots and turned them red. God damn it.
But it looks so much more better. It looks so much better.
God damn. Yeah, but that's the obvious thing to do. That's the fucking obvious. Jesus Christ.
But
I spent like probably 2 days until 3 a.m. making those accursed screenshots.
Okay, Chad, but to be fair, Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Virtual Boy wouldn't look like Donkey Kong Land 2. It would look somewhere closer to the SNES version.
Yeah, that's probably
a
fair.
middle ground between the two.
Yeah.
But I've also seen the misnomer spread around that Rare was actually planning to bring Donkey Kong Country 2 out on the Virtual Boy in lieu of the Super Nintendo, and that's completely false.
Oh no, that's absolutely false.
You look at the timeline there, the Virtual Boy came out in August 95. There's no way that they announced the SNES version, earlier, like late spring 95. So that the timeline's all wrong for that.
Yeah, I mean, considering DKC 1 and 2 came out literally a year apart, and how enormously polished and as much of an advancement as Part 2 is over Part 1. Like, aside from probably a small vacation and then their Christmas holiday, I'm sure they were just balls to the wall on the SNES version. There's no way they would have had the time to learn completely new hardware.
Absolutely. And I'm sure even when they took, a holiday, vacation or whatever, they were still thinking ideas during that time. There's no way to shut off your brain completely.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it was just there was no break between Country and Country 2, and they wanted to arbitrarily decided to completely switch platforms on this untested piece of hardware. No way. What I could see, I've often thought maybe that after the Virtual Boy quickly came and went and crashed, they changed gears and decided to make Donkey Kong Land 2 instead, and that's the reason they hewed so closely to the original, but I think that's wrong too. Mm-hmm. I think this was just an idea they had, and they quickly, the Stampers probably put a kibosh on it, or somebody, they just realized this is not going to be financially profitable, let's just abort this.
We just don't have the resources to do this kind of thing the way that Rare would want to do it.
Right, and Rare always tried to do it right, and they were probably so focused on the Nintendo Ultra 64 at the time that I could see it just being, and plus with Donkey Kong Land 2, what's the point of a third iteration of Donkey Kong Country 2 at that time?
One of the tragedies, I think, of the Ultra 64 not getting that name is that Chris Sutherland never had an opportunity to be the announcer in its ad campaign.
Well, that's why they had Ultra combos, right?
Oh, is it really?
Because that's in Killer Instinct, the arcade game. It started out, with...
Well, yeah, I know that, when they were sort of obliquely advertising Killer Instinct Gold.
Well, yeah, they said, coming in 1995 for the Nintendo Ultra 64, Killer Instinct.
I didn't know that that's where the Ultra Combo came from, though. I thought that was just like an extreme 90s term.
No, they named it because the whole market ad campaign around Killer Instinct this is running. It was a lie. It was a complete lie, but they said it was running on Nintendo Ultra 64 hardware.
Gotcha.
And so it was all just wrapped up in the marketing for that game, which it kind of got cut off at its knees when Nintendo Japan said, hey, we want you to just call it the Nintendo 64. We want this to have a worldwide universal name.
Yeah.
So, which for the best, but I think Japan should have said, no, we like the Ultra shit because that's badass in 90s. Probably for the best. Nintendo 64 is simple, clean, whatever. But, yeah, so Donkey Kong Country 2, we had a lot of ideas for it, like, and basically cribbed from Virtual Boy Wario Land, where one of our ideas was, barrel blasting between the foreground and the background, which we eventually got with Retro's games, right? So yeah, it's kind of weird that Retro's games were eventually a realization of it. But I mean, what do you think? Like, how would Donkey Kong Country 2 Virtual Boy have differed from the original beyond, like, do you think that it would have just like hewed very closely, or would it have gone off and done its own thing?
Well, I think that might be one of the reasons why they didn't move forward with the project, is because in that sprite-based game, unless they really wanted to pull the game apart, redo a bunch of assets, and put it back together again, which, was certainly something that they, to an extent, did for the Game Boy Advance version, but nowhere near to the degree or even in the mid-90s to the level of difficulty that they would have faced on the Virtual Boy. If they didn't do that, then really it would have just been a straight port with some slightly more 3D versions, and that wouldn't have leveraged the unique hardware in as full a way that it could have.
Yeah, it's a shame Rare didn't have more time with the Virtual Boy. Because, it released, the summer after Donkey Kong Country, which it seems like there's an eternity between the release of Donkey Kong Country and, the release of the Virtual Boy, but it was just a matter of months. And
I think that a Coconut Crackers It's Mr. Pants style puzzler on the Virtual Boy would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so. I lament the Rare didn't have time to do anything, because I think had they had a game at launch for the Virtual Boy riding off the wave of Donkey Kong Country Mania, it could have really helped the system. I don't think it would have saved it or anything, but they definitely probably would have moved more units.
Yeah. Well, just anything with the Rare logo was like printing gold.
Well, they didn't put the Rare logo on their games until the Nintendo 64, though.
Are you sure?
Yep. Go back
on the boxes.
Go back and look at the boxes for the first 3 country games.
Wow. I'll have to. I mean, obviously, I've still got them all. But
I'm pretty sure Killer Instinct Gold was the first time they put the Rare. That's when the Rare logo started to become like a selling point. Like, this is Rare.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then, of course, for the re-releases, the Player's Choice re-releases, they went back and put the Rare logo on Donkey Kong Country games. But yeah, until then, it wasn't part of the package.
Interesting. Well, good for Rare then, making sure that logo was seen front and center at the start of every DKC.
Yeah. I mean, that really again burned it into my brain.
You and everyone else. I mean, you see that wireframe, that green Rare logo get constructed, and that's where you're like, oh my god, this is. You don't know what it is, but it's the mark of a good game.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have loved to have seen an original Donkey Kong game for this. I think I'm almost glad we didn't get Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Virtual Boy, because I feel like this early in the series, having a straight up port like this would have cheapened it.
And it would have been kind of a swing and a miss unless they were willing to really deconstruct and reconstruct the game. In which case, why do a port? Why not just make an original adventure?
Yeah, I think the first Donkey Kong Universe game that didn't reach 1 million copies sold was Conker's Pocket Tales, but it would have been this game, Donkey Kong Country 2 Virtual Boy, had it actually been completed.
Yeah.
I would have loved. I really wish we had a DKU game for the Virtual Boy, because it's such a misunderstood system. It's a system full of so much potential, and I think that's where I really I mourn its early demise, because I think where I really love the system isn't so much for the game library it had, but the game library it could have had and should have had. Had it they just found the right timing for it. And they found a way to actually market it. That's another thing. They couldn't actually advertise the games in the commercials because there's no way to replicate the 3D effect. So they just kind of had
there would be these craggy mountaintops with lightning in the background, much like the Crossfire commercial, and kids scaling the mountainside, and at the ziggurat they discover a Virtual Boy.
Well, and you would have these 90s kids with wearing the Virtual Boy visor in the commercials, frantically playing a game, and there'd be all these effects, After Effects added to make it seem badass, but they would never actually show the games because they couldn't.
Nintendo's first virtual reality immersive experience.
So it was really just a tough sell from beginning to end, and it's a shame that Nintendo took. I mean, there's been disputing claims here, but for the most part, on the outside looking in, they took it out on Gunpei. He was the fall guy for the Virtual Boy when really his hands were tied with this. He wanted to spend more time developing it, and they made him rush it out. They made him the whole red and black thing was a compromise because they didn't give him enough time to make it work in full color.
Is it really? I mean,
Yeah.
where is this coming from? Is this just sort of like the tale that's been handed down like a game of telephone, or
it's the internet.
So I don't know. I question this sort of behind the scenes justification or history if it just comes from the internet, especially in those days when, as we know from our game soundtracks, things can get very easily solidified in those early years of the internet. But yeah, I remember hearing the same story. I just wanted to have a little dollop of skepticism thrown into the mix.
Well, okay. I don't know. Go to Wikipedia. And,
oh, you mean Wikipedia that says It's Mr. Pants came out in 2005?
Yes, that Wikipedia. But to be fair, I'm sure they source their. Oh, okay.
Citation needed, Hyle.
According to David Sheff's book Game Over, Yokoi never actually intended for the console to be released in its ultimate form.
Okay.
However, Nintendo pushed the Virtual Boy to market so that it could focus development resources for the Nintendo 64.
Well, citation provided.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, it's a shame. And then he was forced out of I don't know. He left Nintendo shortly thereafter, and then of course he met his tragic demise. But not that that's related to the failure of the Virtual Boy. It's a shame that his tenure at Nintendo ended on such a sour note, though.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's funny because Nintendo was trying to push it as the third tier, this complement between the Nintendo consoles and the Game Boy, the portable. So it really was this weird, like, in between consoles and portable gaming. Because it was neither. It wasn't portable in the slightest, but it wasn't something you hooked into your TV. So, I don't know. But later on, about a decade later, they would retry the whole third pillar thing with the Nintendo DS, which, if you'll remember at the time, it was billed as, we're not replacing the Game Boy Advance. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a third system that we're going to market, and all three are going to be in harmony together. Immediately afterwards, like 2 months afterwards, 3 months afterwards, basically, support for the Game Boy Advance died.
Yeah, and that was. I wonder if that was just a marketing thing that they said, or if it was ever their actual intent.
I'm sure it was a marketing thing because remember how tremendously popular the Game Boy Advance was. I mean, it was really what kind of changed the perception for, like, one of the things that changed the perception that video games could be enjoyed by adults, because a lot of, like, businessmen bought the Game Boy Advance and would play it on planes, and it would just be the stress relief thing.
Yeah.
The Game Boy Advance was huge, and it was probably bad PR to just say we're discontinuing this.
Well, and it wasn't even the Game Boy Advance; it was that Game Boy branding. You know, that was all anyone knew of a Nintendo handheld. And
the Game Boy branding, you know, it lasted for over 15 years.
Right.
I mean, people were I was attached to it. I'm still attached to it. Granted, it's probably for the best that they retired it, because what the fuck is a Game Boy? But
well, and it's also slightly misogynistic.
Yes. I remember Nintendo Power actually ran a jokes story or line or prediction that, and I actually believed it because I was a dumb kid, that Nintendo was going to release something called the Virtual Girl in 1996. It was going to be a hot pink Virtual Boy with pink graphics.
Do you remember the Talk Boy as popularized by Home Alone 2 Lost in New York?
I had a Talk Boy.
Yeah, the father. So a little, I think maybe a year later, the Talk Boy company, they released a Talk Girl for all the young females who would like to baffle Tim Curry and sneak into a hotel.
Of course, nowadays it would be called the Talk Cisgendered White Male.
Okay, can we not get into trans politics on the show? Like, I'm
not saying one way or another. I made a simple quip.
I am in full support of the LGBT community, and I don't know enough about this particular cis issue, aside from that episode of South Park, to do any sort of argument justice, and I don't want to have to put my foot in my mouth on a later episode.
Right. It would be the equivalent of you saying that all video game tennis is Pong. It would just be
exactly.
It would be a huge scandal.
Oh, yeah, this is just as bad.
So, you know, that did strike me as reminiscent of the Virtual Boy. Of course, then the successor to the Nintendo DS was the Nintendo 3DS, and that's raised the question. You actually have a 3D system now, full color 3D system that doesn't need any visor. Mm-hmm. Why the fuck aren't you emulating Virtual Boy games on this?
Yeah, that's a very good. Well, no, it's a very good question with an obvious answer.
And okay, what's the obvious answer?
We're the only ones who want this.
I think the novelty alone, people would buy it if you offered it to them. They would, because look, the Virtual Boy, most people, I would say 92%, and that's a figure. I've crunched the numbers. It's 92%.
Yep. I'm not even going to ask for a citation on this because I trust you based on your previous citation. You've earned enough goodwill for me to just accept this figure.
Terrific. 92% of the internet video game populace has never played a Virtual Boy. All they know about the Virtual Boy comes from memes and jokes and derision over the years.
Yeah.
They've never even seen how a Virtual Boy graphic works because they've never looked into a Virtual Boy visor. They've only seen still images. They've seen the shitty emulated Virtual Boy games that are like purplish blue.
Because all the Virtual Boy emulators require the red blue sunglasses that you get on the back of a cereal box to watch ABC's TGIF lineup.
Yeah. Whoa!
Oh my God! Drew Carey just fired a nail gun at the screen.
That was Tim.
That was Tim Allen.
Yeah, yeah. Lewis and Oswald did a puppet show. Future DK Vine Hall of Famer Ryan Stiles held up a puppet to the camera and just wiggled it around.
He was practicing for his squirrel.
Right.
Double act.
That's why people believe that Conker was his puppet, not a real talking squirrel, because they knew he was well equipped with puppets. Because everybody watched ABC's 3D Week. So
how could you not? You would have to be some kind of an idiot to think that was a gimmick.
I actually remember like a year later, Third Rock from the Sun did 3D, but they did a much superior version of the 3D technology, and it actually got rave reviews.
Like, what did they do? Was John Lithgow just slightly closer to the camera?
No. They did like these really like stylized like 3D segments that were like fantasy segments, and it wasn't just holding shit up at the camera. It was like artfully done, and it got like a lot of good press at the time.
Wow.
But anyway, so I
have no pithy rejoinder.
Pithy rejoinder. That's such a Chad McCanna statement to me. The legacy of the Virtual Boy, Nintendo has shied away from it for years. Infamously, Super Smash Bros. Melee. I think no game celebrated Nintendo's history better than Super Smash Bros. Melee. And in Japan, in the trophy room, they had all their consoles and systems like lined up in the trophy room, and they had a Virtual Boy.
Yeah.
In the Western release of that, and you could actually toggle the language to Japanese and see it, but in other languages, the Virtual Boy was removed.
That's the crazy part. The fact that it's still in the game, but it really is a localization option. The existence of the Virtual Boy was treated as localization for Smash Brothers Melee.
Yeah,
that's the crazy part.
The crazy thing is, it's almost as if Nintendo Japan owns up to it, but Nintendo of America is ashamed of it and tries to like hide from it whenever possible. And that's kind of just slowly gone away over the years. I mean, it's been 20 years now, so I think Nintendo can joke about the failure of the Virtual Boy.
Well, do you remember the trailer for that? What's that sort of social 3DS game where you basically put all your friends in there and it's kind of like The Sims, but you know what I'm talking about? It's like you have all your little Miis running around.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Anyway,
I don't care, honestly.
all of our listeners are screaming into their iPhones.
Yeah, we spent like 5 minutes talking about Teleroboxer, yet we have no idea what this thing is.
Anyway, so
we're men out of our own time, Chad.
It was very popular in Japan, but at any rate, when they launched it in America, I remember there was Nintendo Direct, and the trailer for it actually had the Nintendo executives sort of walking around a Virtual Boy console saying, "All hail Virtual Boy."
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You remember this?
And remember?
Hey, you remember this?
Remember this? Oh,
Yeah, it's from the news. Time for headlines. It's Monday night.
Newspapers. Remember the announcement skit for the Nintendo World Championships this year? Reggie was training with all these Nintendo systems, eating the banana, playing Donkey Kong Country, and he was playing the Virtual Boy.
That's right.
And it was great to see. And he wasn't disparaging. It was kind of tongue-in-cheek. He said, the graphics are great.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, he didn't say, oh, my eyes, I've gone blind. He didn't roll around on the floor for 5 minutes.
Yes, it wasn't the easy shorthand joke you could have made.
So, slowly but surely, Nintendo's embracing this as part of their history, for better or for worse. And I think for better.
Yeah.
The Virtual Boy is nothing to be ashamed about. It failed, but it had a lot of promise, and it had some great games. And
Yeah, it's not let's say Birth of a Nation, where like you want to forget it exists and sweep it under the rug. Like,
but even Birth of the Nation, though, is cited by film historians to at least be a very competently made film, one of the best made films of that early era.
oh yeah, it's an incredible piece of racist filmmaking.
No,
Yeah.
that's the unfortunate thing about it. It's such a well-made film. It's unfortunate that it's filled with such shitty, hateful, awful, backwards views. But
right. I'm just saying, like, when you dig up a time capsule of Nintendo of the 90s, this is not something that you should sweep under the, the archaeologist who, wants Nintendo to be remembered fondly. They wouldn't, when no one's looking, swipe it from the time capsule and never tell anyone.
Right.
It's like, why bother turning a blind eye to this piece of Nintendo history? It's utterly harmless, and yes, it's a product of its time, but I think there's some fun to be had in that.
Absolutely, and that's why I want to see the games on a 3DS. At very least, Galactic Pinball. Of course, you'd have to turn off the lights, be in a completely dark room to play it, to really, get anywhere close to, maybe start a tire fire, to get anywhere close to the proper aesthetic. But I do find it funny, though, how we've kind of come around again on 3D and virtual reality. My closing thoughts are, the Virtual Boy was kind of the end of the virtual reality as the promise of the future. Mm-hmm. After the failure of the Virtual Boy, even though it wasn't virtual reality in the slightest, it was kind of just 5% to the promise of virtual reality. But after the failure, everybody was like, okay, well, that virtual reality is never happening. That was a silly notion we had. Let's move on.
Honestly, I think for the resurgence of 3D, in a strange way, we've got James Cameron and George Lucas to thank for that.
Why George Lucas?
The Star Wars re-releases. Like, George Lucas, he obviously pioneered HD projection.
Yeah, I know, but he
and that sort of laid the groundwork for the technology that would be required to do 3D.
Remember when George Lucas said he was going to re-release all 6 Star Wars films in 3D, and
then they sold it to Disney.
He released The Phantom Menace, and it did like no business, and so they quietly scuttled those plans and sold the company to Disney.
Which was the obviously the option to go for it, because no one wants to trudge through episodes 2 and 3 before you get to a 3D repurposing of the good ones. But
I know. Oh my God, Attack of the Clones in 3D. Now that's migraine inducing.
Yeah. Now that would be this rough, coarse, and irritating thing that gets in my eyes.
Yeah, but now with the Oculus and Microsoft's 3D technology, it's amazing that we've kind of come back around and said, oh, actually, this is the future. We got sidetracked there. Sorry about that, everybody.
Right.
And I'm hoping then the Virtual Boy will be looked back on as not a misstep, but just kind of the last attempt at getting there before we took this massive detour. And you know, it is what it is. It had the potential, and I'm sorry that we missed out on all the great games we could have gotten for the Virtual Boy. But you should check it out. I mean, scour eBay, scour, you know, used video game stores. Maybe you can find one.
You might be able to. I haven't looked up how much a Virtual Boy console is going for. It's probably quite a bit more than it was.
Oh yeah, because now that the whole game collector's market is a thing.
Well, and supply has just got to be much lower. I mean, over time, these things either stop working or people just lose them in an attic and forget they were ever there.
Honestly, the Nintendo systems, they hold up for a long time. Like, it's not like the hardware is shoddy. So I would be amazed that the Virtual Boy stopped working. Like,
I have a hard time playing mine because the stand that you've got to hook it onto has kind of cracked at the part where the two legs are held together, so the legs are always splaying, and it can't hold up the weight of the actual visor.
Well, maybe Nintendo will finally get around to releasing that Virtual Boy strap-on. Hey, baby!
It's the obvious choice. I just checked eBay, and there's a working Virtual Boy console with Mario Tennis for $127.50.
That's not bad.
It's not bad.
Here's
one that has 5, 9, 10, 12 games and the Virtual Boy for $275.
That's a bargain.
Well, yeah, for the 12 games, considering how hard it is to find, yeah.
That good lord, yeah. So somebody listening to this needs to snap that up.
Yeah, there is a lot of, yeah. If you're willing to go, between $100 and $200, you can get yourself a Virtual Boy and a good lump of games. And these are, by the way, these are buy it now prices. These aren't the low auction. So
right. So yeah, absolutely. Check. We've peddled the Virtual Boy for years now. We've got Mark Mazai, who former news horror on DK Vine.
Yeah,
he bought a Virtual Boy and he fell in love with it. I know. Did Jeff buy one?
I think Jeff owns one. Yeah,
Matt, of course, bought a Virtual Boy. Which was it even ever released in Europe?
I think that it might not have been. Maybe
because I remember it was like a big thing. He had to import it from the States, and he's like the only person
and use a DC converter to play the damn thing.
Yeah. But Matt has it. So we've done our part, shilling for the Virtual Boy. We had a brief friendship with the One Virtual Boy fan site out there for a while.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So, you know, it's weird that DK Vine loves the Virtual Boy, considering no Donkey Kong Universe games were ever released for it. But I think that just we're very much men of 1995. What can we say?
That's true. Yeah. I never want to refer to myself as that again, but I'll take it in this regard.
Anyway, so yeah. Check out the Virtual Boy, and you won't go blind. You might get a migraine, but play responsibly, and you won't. And then, just hit up the trophy shops and make yourself a trophy with your Galactic Pinball high score.
It came from the third dimension, with its own brain, its own voice, its own legs. There's only one problem. It needs your eyes. Virtual Boy. See it now in 3D.
This has been a File 2 production.
¡Qué rico!